Okay, so I got the hands up from my chairman, CA Jai Prakash Agrawal. Good morning once again. I want a louder one. I know half of the members are outside. Good morning, ICI family. That's the way I want to listen. And when I say good morning, or I should say like good morning to the brave souls who made it on the time despite the gravitational pull of the Sunday morning sleep, right? So Sundays are for the rest, but for the ICI Dubai chapter, we says Sundays are for the rising sharp, learning smart, and growing stronger. And yes, the coffee is on us, but the compliance wisdom is all yours today. So now, before we dive into the knowledge pool, let's pause for something deeply meaningful. We are privileged to live between the two incredible nations, India, where our roots and values originate, and the UAE, our second home that embraced us with the warmth and opportunity. So with that, I would like to request our technical team to please play the national anthem of both the countries and followed by the timeless ICI motto. And I request everyone to please rise. And yes, it's a request, please sing along with the national anthems. Technical team, please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामंशो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यति कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you. Please take your seats. Okay, before we formally start, let me ask you one thing. Today is one special day. Do you have any idea what's the day today? Wow. I got to hear in such a loud voice. So happy International Father's Day. I think fathers are those real superheroes who won't wear the caps. They wear the cap of the responsibility with the pride. And why I am saying this, because I was not lucky enough, because I have lost my father in my early 20s. And I know what's the importance of the father in the life. But still, whatever time I spent with him, I'm still cherishing. So can we give a 3 cheers to all the wonderful fathers over there? Hip, hip! Hip, hip! Hip, hip! Thank you so much. And now allow me to formally welcome you all today's event on the anti-money laundering laws and compliance, part of our Year of Growth initiatives for 25-26. AML may sound like be a back-end topic, but its impact is front and center in today's business world. Money laundering threatens the trust, transparency, and sustainability of economies. And in today's high-risk, high-regulation environment, staying ahead of the compliance is not optional, it's essential. This morning, we will hear from the seasoned experts who bring not just the theory, but deep hands on the insights, from shaping cutting-edge tech system to writing the books. When I'm saying writing the books, literally I mean it, writing the books on financial crime preventions. Together, we will explore how professionals, whether in finance, exchange house, consulting, or DNFBPs, can adopt risk-based approaches, stay vigilant, and ensure institutional resilience. So once again, thank you for choosing to be here this morning, not to just earn the CP hours, but to build stronger ethical frameworks for your organizations and yourself. Now it's time to invite the captain of our ship, the man who steered the ICI Dubai chapter with the vision, composure, and boundless energy. Yes, of course, I am talking about our very own chairman, CA Jai Prakash Agrawal. Please welcome with a huge round of applause our chairman for his address.
Good morning, ICI. Good morning to all esteemed speakers, renowned panelists, honored guests, my respected seniors, and my dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to today's event on anti-money laundering. Our theme today, no silent risk, and how you can prevent the next AML breach, is not just a theme. It's a gentle alarm reminding us, and this is beautiful lines, reminding us that danger often whispers before it screams. Danger often whispers before it screams. 3 days ago, Air India flight AI 171 rose from the runway in Ahmedabad, climbed to a meter of 650 feet, lost power, issued a frantic mayday, and fell into a residential quarter, taking hundreds of innocent lives. Investigators are now going through black boxes, footage, and wreckage to learn what controls failed and why. That crash did not start at the moment of impact. It started with an unnoticed weakness, which was quiet or got missed. In AML also, weaknesses are equally quiet and may also get ignored. And it too can shatter lives, businesses, even economies. And that is why AML knowledge, AML understanding is very, very important. Before it happens to us, let's learn. Let's understand and forbid any such happening. I am thankful to all my 5 speakers today and thought leaders who are taking out time on Sunday and helping us to learn on this. Can we have a round of applause for all the 5 speakers to come today and educate us on a really important topic? Now, before I jump into the session, let's quickly look at the leaderboard and the calendar ahead so that you can plan your calendar and dates for May and June. Clicker. Okay, let me start with first leaderboard. Top influencers, total 26 members have introduced new members here. And who is leading it? The top 3, I could not put all the 26 names. It was too long a list. Obviously, Dikshit with Sachin Tendulkar score of top influencers, people there. He's leading it, followed by Monica Mistry of 2. So still members can introduce new members and can become top influencer. And right now, as I said, Dikshit is leading the top influencer position. Influencer is a chartered accountant who influences another chartered accountant to become a member of Dubai chapter. That is called influencer. And the person who will lead at the top will be awarded on annual conference. That is top influencer. Looking at power performer. Who is power performer? The one who introduces new speakers to us. Still Rajesh Malgani is leading us with 3 introductions, 2 speakers who have taken the stage, spoke from this platform and was loved by all my audience. So that's what Rajesh Malgani has done. He's the power performer who is performing from the front, introducing new speakers to the chapter. Next is Master Blaster, the one who added his new sponsor. One guy has added, Unni Krishnan sir, today I saw you having a coffee. You are still leading the chart. Any other member has any other sponsors? If you introduce them to us and he is getting onboarded, you will be called the Master Blaster and you will be recognized on our annual day. The last one, the top contributor. There are 3 ways you can be a top contributor. One, introduce a new venue. Is this venue new? Yes. Are we doing the venue today? Yes. This is the first time we are doing it. Has this been introduced by a member? Yes, it has been introduced by a member. So venue suggestions can be given. Did you love the venue today or not? So this is a new venue. We are exploring new venues. My dear friends, we are only 9 in committee, but we are 3,000 in numbers. Everyone has connects. Everyone has reach. I'm looking forward for that reach to come forward. You can reach out to any of my committee members and give them your suggestions on venue, your suggestions on speakers, your suggestions on sponsors. Now, the next one where you can contribute is participating in the Job Carnival. Have you seen the flyer of Job Carnival 12th and 13th? A little loud, 12th and 13th? Yes. This is the first time we are doing a job carnival. Yes, we do events. We explore learning opportunities for our members. But I believe as a chapter, it's our responsibility to ensure that our members also get jobs. And here I'm looking for some support. The support in terms of, please look at your employer, talk to them. If they are looking forward to hire an Indian chartered accountant, reach out to them, reach out to us. There are 3 members, committee members who has been dedicated for this. I'll give you the names also in the next slide. Reach out to them and enroll yourself or your organization as an employer. If you do that, you also fall in the top contributor category and maybe you will be called top contributor at the annual conference. The last area, participated in community service and delivered. Last week when I was traveling to New Zealand, yes, we did one community service. All of you, all of the members who said, yes, I want to be a participant in community service. On 5th of April, we released a form. We released a form saying, do you want to contribute to the community? All the members who said yes have been added to a WhatsApp group and they are seeing that group. And whenever any community service, whether from consulate, whether from embassy, whether from anyone comes there, we specify that in that. There are 2 times we have done it. One person, an Indian community, an Indian brother needed some community help in terms of understanding about a problem he was facing in his daily life. Consulate reached out to us. We reached out to our members and our member, I think Nikhil, helped us in connecting to a lawyer so that he can get a financial aid or a legal advice on how to cater it. That is one community service. Second, last week only, we did a labor camp on financial awareness. So this year, we are also focusing on our members, but aakhir mein Indian hu, we focus on our community. If something on the community comes, we are okay to do it. If you want to be participate in that, please do that too. Right now, the person who is leading is Rajesh Raichura, who has contributed in all the fronts for being a top contributor. Now moving on, I have told you the leaderboard, this is over. Let's go to calendar ahead. Not much change. 31st of May, I already gave you the calendar. Why I am giving you today again? Because I see few new faces who never come to the chapter, but today being AML, today being Sunday, are sitting in between us and they need to know what is the calendar ahead. Till yesterday, we were in New Zealand. How many of you have visited New Zealand? Very few. Then please go and visit New Zealand. It is a beautiful space. It's a beautiful place. It will give you a very good feeling. So if you have not been to, please visit New Zealand. We came yesterday and today we are having this event. Today is AML, which is on the list. No silent risk and how you can prevent next AML breach. This is for today. Followed by 19th and 20th Power BI session. My dear friends, please note this is an extension or continuation from the last month, May. We already did session 1 and session 2. How many of you attended that session 1 and session 2 of Power BI? A lot. How many of you are willing to attend session 3 and session 4, not attending session? Yeah, okay. If you are willing to do it, a humble request, anyone who wants to attend Power BI, it's an online session. You don't have to beat the traffic. You don't have to be hassling the traffic. Do it from your home, but please go through the YouTube link which has been shared to all the attendees that this is session 1 and session 2. Then only you will be able to make sense in session 3 and session 4 happening on June 19th and 20th. Obviously, give a round of applause to Dikshit who has organized this. Dikshit, can you stand for acknowledgement? Thank you. I miss to acknowledge the person who arranged this session. I was traveling, but still on 15th, if we are sitting here, many of you approached me and said, Jay, very good event. How can you organize after coming yesterday? It was because my committee is working on it, and one dedicated person in any event is working. Yuga, can you stand up? He was the person who was coordinating with all the speakers and venue to ensure we do a good job. Followed by 19th and 20th, 21st will be a physical event. We arranged a medical camp for you. आपको पढ़ाना भी है, आपकी सेहत का भी ख्याल रखना है. We take care of your health. We are having a medical camp for 2 hours. Do ensure you participate, including an eye checkup. I insisted, eye checkup is a must for a chartered accountant. All basic tests will be there, but eye checkup is something which we are doing with in collaboration with Aster. So they have agreed that they will set it up, and eye checkup will also be done along with other parameters of vitamin, glucose, and others. So that is happening. Followed with yoga. 2 ladies, one is a 6 times chartered accountant, 6 times world champion in kettlebell. It's equipment in your gym. हम gym जाते नहीं, हमें पता नहीं चलता. It's equipment in kettlebell. She's 6-time champion, world champion, and also a chartered accountant. She is coming from India to deliver the lecture on how to balance health as well as your business. Second is a yoga professional who is coming from India again. She is a yoga lady, again a chartered accountant. My focus is, yes, there are inspirations sitting within our community of 500,000 chartered accountants. I'm trying to pick them up and bring to the podiums to say, please teach us how we can balance our business as well as other things. So 2 chartered accountants coming from India for you, followed by 2 doctors who will talk on eating habits as well as stress management. I see a lot of stress nowadays around members. Everyone is tied up with the stress. That's why one doctor will come and talk to you on stress management as well on June 21st on International Yoga Day. So please do register and attend. The flyers are already out. One thing you should appreciate about my committee this year is we are releasing flyers 15 days in advance, so you get optimum time to register. Do you think that's a good initiative? Thank you very much. You can clap for that. That's required because that helps us to go on and on. Sports tournament flyer 28 June already released is again a cricket and a table tennis flyer. Usual way we do it, it will be the same way we are doing it. June 29th, yes, tree plantation we'll be doing at the consulate. I have already discussed with the consulate and we are doing a tree plantation there as well as blood donation. All the details in this week will be in your inboxes. Please do register and come with us. July 5th is a CA Day celebration. Planning something on it to entertain you, to motivate you and to inspire you. I am looking for 3 speakers. Entertainment, every word counts. हम chartered accountant हैं, हमारे लिए हर word important है. Every chartered accountant word counts. So you will have entertainment, you will have inspiration, you will have motivation. That is my promise for CA Day celebration on July 5th. July 9th, e-invoicing in UI. It's an online event. You can attend from your home, offices, anywhere you want. Arranged by Sanjay. E-invoicing in UI. E-invoicing will be reality in coming year 2026. E-invoicing is coming. We have to be ready as chartered accountant. That is why that is important to learn. And an expert speaker is coming. Ishan will be there to speak with you. Sanjay, thank you very much. Where are you? Can you stand up there? Oh, he's already standing. He does not have a seat. Give a round of applause to Sanjay for arranging e-invoicing session for our members. Now the important one which I said, 12th and 13th. Here I need your support in terms of employers. If you have employers, please register and help us in getting them registered for jobs for you all. And you can contact 3 people mentioned there. Vijay Mohan, can you stand up please? Vijay is there. Give a round of applause. He is coordinating. Reach out to him along with Dikshit and Ashna. All 3 of them are coordinating. Reach out to any one of them. It does not mean you cannot reach out to all the 6 others. You can. They are the primary focus. So if you can reach to them, that's fine. Or you can reach to any one of us, any 9 of us, and we will help you in July 12th and 13th. First time we are trying it. I'm not saying we'll do it perfectly, but at least we will give it a start. But I will need your support to give it a good start so that we can do in years after years. July 17th, again an online session. This time online is my focus. Traffic is increasing in Dubai. Traffic is increasing in UAE. Not possible to ask everyone to come down and gather. That's why online is a session this year. July 17th, asset valuation impairment. Again an online session organized by Balram. Balram, are you inside? Yes. Give a round of applause for Balram for organizing that online session. Next is a sports tournament, badminton, chess, swimming. All the standard ones will be happening on July 19th. You will see a circular again. And July 26th is rule-based pillar 2, 15% will be a mandate, my dear friends. It is coming on our way. Are we ready for it as chartered accountant? Do we understand how to calculate? Do we understand the rules around pillar 2? If we don't, then this is your session. Again, Ashna and Sanjay is coordinating for it, and they are already there. So if you can see my entire committee, if you see it's not Jay Agarwal, it is the entire committee is working on it to give you a calendar for July and August. Don't they deserve a round of applause for planning so much in advance and ensuring learning continues and relevant learning continues. Last thing, calendar ahead is over. What's in store? After July, Jay, what you are planning to do? Few events I will give you what exactly you are planning, and I'll tell you why I am telling you in advance. Corporate tax filings, do's and don'ts. One thing which will come after June and July I already gave you from August onwards. Corporate tax filings, do's and don'ts. Next, investment options, where to invest. Everyone has money, want to invest somewhere. We'll do one session on investments, multiple investment options where you can invest. Speakers will come, educate you, train you, and then obviously you can decide where you do want to put your money. They will just advise you what is going right, wrong in the market. That is investment options. Next, technology summit. What is lying in the future? One summit we are trying to do on technology in the years, in the months ahead. Learning valuations is important because valuations will be the key. With City coming in, valuations, merger acquisitions happening, valuations is the key. Do we understand valuations? I think our members need to learn valuations. That is why learning valuations, you will see an event on the same. Wills and inheritance. We all are earning money in UAE. Have we done our wills? Have we done our inheritance planning? I guess most of us are missing it. Please learn because current mein to sab acha hai, future unknown hai. That's why please ensure attend this event as well whenever it is declared. All is not about education. Kabhi fun be important hai. The fun is required. Independence Day and Onam celebration on 24th August. We are planning in the mid of Onam as well as Independence Day and Onam celebration. Who are coordinating? Let's keep it in secret. We'll declare subsequently. Next, corporate tax and IFRS workshops. Yes, we will have more workshops because I am receiving some feedbacks that more workshops are required on corporate tax as well as IFRS. We'll again do it. Why I'm telling you? I need your help. I told you this is year of growth. This is year of members. My members will come to help me how to do the events. If you have any speaker recommendation, if you think in any of the topics you have a strong speaker, please reach out to the committee. Please reach out to us and we will evaluate the profile and accordingly we can accommodate. That is why I'm telling you this is what is required to be done in future. With this, let me go back to the event. Is it fine? Everyone is okay? Okay. Now, thank you to our chief guest and proudly our own member, CA Nishant. Sir, seeing you after a long time in CA event, but good you can make it. We know him for long, but today we'll learn from him and his experience. He will guide us on relevant laws, findings of national risk assessment, FATF status as on date, how it stands, and our role as chartered accountant in AML space. So thank you, Mr. Nishant. I know you have a busy calendar, still you are able to make it. Thank you very much. Can I have a round of applause for Mr. Nishant Nutta? This will be followed by another esteemed speaker, and I can call him a dear friend as well. He speaks straight and hits hard. Mr. Shashwat Sanyal, who will guide us on risk-based approach, spot the fault line early. Please note, a risk-based approach is not paperwork. It is a radar. He will explore how to calibrate that radar using data analytics, customer segmentation, scenario testing, and to pick up faint signals before they grow into disasters. Can I have a round of applause for Shashwat Sanyal for covering risk-based approach to us? He's still not awake because he's Sunday. He normally sleeps at that time. But give a round of applause so that he can wake up and give us a good session there. I see a smile on his face. Thank you to our next esteemed speaker after him, who delivers AML caution wrapped up in his cute smile. Mr. Jasbir Bindra, a smile you can see on his face, and trust me, when you see it, you will agree with me, he carries a cute smile always. He will speak on reporting duties and early detection, because in AML, every minute matters. Please remember, when compliance team hesitates, criminal accelerates. So don't let criminal accelerate. He will discuss on how to create clear escalation paths, establish culture of no blame reporting, and adopt smart automation to reduce the timeline for suspicion to action. Because in AML, every minute matters. Finally, thanks to our panelists, a calm, composed Mr. Amarjeet Singh, and our moderator, a dear friend, an ex-banker, a compliance advisor, and everyone knows him, Mr. Rajiv Hira, and also a round of applause for him because he helped us throughout the event to structure it. He is the one who said, as a chartered accountant, what we should cover in AML space because he's a chartered accountant and an ex-banker. They will discuss on a panel on collective responsibility for AML compliance, rebuilding a culture of correct control. They will explore practical ways to share responsibility, embedding AML in performance reviews, rewarding ethical behavior, as well as take the advice from all the employees. Collectively, they all bring decades of frontline experience from banking to law enforcement to audit. Give all five a round of applause for helping us achieve this event today on 15th Sunday. Please remember, if you look at history and AML breach stories, you will find one thing in common. You look at stories behind, that is what I have my understanding. Controls are weakest when we assume they are strongest. When we assume that controls are the strongest, they are the weakest. So it requires evaluation, continuous monitoring, and analytics to give us insights. That is what required in AML space. The last words and the last thoughts for today's session. Imagine if the silent fault that doomed flight AI 171 had been found one checklist earlier, the lives could have been saved. Imagine if the silent fault sitting in your organizations are found one alert earlier, the unexpected can be forbidden. I wish you all the best. May this knowledge session becomes into action. May your action becomes a habit, and may your habit becomes and creates a more compliant UAE. That's from my side. Thank you very much. Enjoy the session and let the session begin.
Thank you so much, Chairman CA Jayaprakash Agarwal, for setting the tone for today's event and sharing the calendars in detail. And I really like that line when you said that the control are the weakest when we think they are strong. So I think that applies not only in the AML but in the real life as well. Can I have a thunderous round of applause for our chairman, CA Jayaprakash Agarwal? Now, as we move ahead, it's time to get into the heart of today's theme, anti-money laundering. We often hear the term in compliance checklist and regulatory framework, but today we aim to truly understand its impact, risk, and proactive approaches professionals can adopt across industries. Our first speaker and the chief guest, of course, of the event, CA Nishant Nota, this morning is someone who has pioneered AML innovation in the region and globally. And to formally introduce him, I would like to call upon the stage our very own Vice Chairman, CA Rishi Chawla, a dynamic professional and a passionate contributor to every initiative of the ICI Dubai chapter. Can I have a big round of applause for our Vice Chairman, CA Rishi Chawla?
Thank you so much, Secretary Sab. I think we need a round of applause for the Chairman, Secretary. They have just come from New Zealand yesterday, and look at the energy. Give them a powerful round of applause, everyone, please. And to the entire committee, you can see our Chairman had described, everybody is contributing one way or the another. And I'm really proud to say even our members are contributing in a big way. That is very, very valuable for us. Thank you so much. Right. Let me start with a quick question. How many of you believe that money laundering is something that only banks and DNFBPs need to worry about? Raise of hands. Anybody who think just banks or financial institutions have to worry about DNFBPs? Or, sorry, the AML? I'm sure all of us feel that everybody has to be aware. The reality is, even we are not legally classified under the AML regulations. Once we are caught anywhere in the chain, in the laundering chain, the consequences can hit us as hard as to the banks. We have seen it. Banks suddenly freezing bank accounts when they detect suspicious activity without wanting a proof of guilt even. And they just look at how to cover the risk, so whoever caught in the process has to bear the brunt. And let me tell you that the impact of AML is huge worldwide. According to the United Nations, the estimated amount of money laundered globally in 1 year is about $800 billion to $2 trillion. That's almost 5% of global GDP. And the truth is, no industry, no profession or region is untouched by the silent threat. And this area continues to innovate. And just recently, I'm sure you must have seen that deep fake audio where a person transferred 220,000 pounds based on an audio call that was AI triggered to transfer the money. So that is the kind of level AML is going. We are learning AI every day, but the fraudsters are learning even faster than us. So that's make it even more important for us to know it more importantly than even others will think about. As chartered accountants, compliance professionals, and decision makers, we are the first line of defense. Understanding financial crime isn't a technical add-on, it's a strategic necessity. And to lead us with this high-stakes conversation, we are joined today by a leader who doesn't just enforce compliance, he redefines how it works in the real world. It is my honor to introduce our chief guest and visionary in financial crime compliance and regulatory innovation, CA Nishant Nothar, Executive Vice President and Head of AML, ABC and RegTech at Mashreq Bank. With a career spanning more than 25 years dedicated to building systems and think ahead of the fraudster, Nishant has been at the helm of cutting-edge solutions in the anti-bribery controls, AML frameworks, and regulatory automation, keeping institutions not only compliant, but resilient. He brings the rare ability to connect global compliance intelligence with practical tech-driven implementation. And today he's here with us to share his thoughts on what lies ahead. So without taking much time, please join me in welcoming CA Nishant onto the stage. Can we have a big round of applause for CA Nishant when he walks onto the stage?
Can you all hear me? Excellent. Just let me see if this is working well or not. Okay. Morning, everyone. Thank you very much, my esteemed colleagues and chartered accountant brothers and sisters. Rishi was saying that I don't really come here much, etc. But yeah, I've been here since 2005. And when I stand here and kind of recollect what the last 20 years of my history has been here, takes me back to 18th of September 2005 when I actually landed here. I landed at about 7 in the evening, and then next day morning at 9 o'clock, I'm sitting in front of a partner of KPMG, and I'd just joined forensics division. And when I joined forensics, within 2 hours, he actually put me up in front of a client, and I was sitting in ABN AMRO Bank, starting the biggest AML remediation without actually understanding what does AML mean. And it took me a few days to figure out what the whole thing really means. And of course, you must have remembered that back then, ABN AMRO was going through a massive remediation exercise. They had a $580 million fine for AML shortcomings. It's actually not AML. It was actually related to sanctions, circumvention, related activities, issues, etc. And in a sense, I am an accidental financial crime fighter. I didn't really get into this with the intention to become a financial crime fighter. I started off just like anybody, a normal chartered accountant, went to Chennai, did my articleship, and then I was crazy about automobiles and cars, and I so badly wanted to get into an automotive industry, essentially. And there I ended up choosing industrial traineeship with Ford India, where my guru, Sam Manipadam, who sits here in this group, he decided to choose me as an industrial trainee, and then I went on to spend about 5 years there. And then, of course, the typical Mallu dream of wanting to come to the Middle East bit me. And then I said, okay, yep, that's it. And then I'm not just a Malu dream, right? It's pretty much all of our Indians' dreams to get to the Middle East and, better life, better opportunities, etc. Little did I know that I was just about to fall off into a career path that I just absolutely had any clue about. Although when I jumped into it, and I just came in only because KPMG Forensics chose to hire me at the junior most level, rather than KPMG Audit or somebody else, etc. And a few years go by, I had the greatest opportunity of working on large fraud risk assessments, large fraud investigations, as well as bigger anti-money laundering supports for especially banks like Barclays Bank and a few others, etc. Of course, I'm going to be quite open and free here about naming my firms, etc., because I know that you're all very mature chartered accountants, and we can follow Chatham House rules here, etc. So I'm going to be very open and honest. This is my nature. So in case you feel, ooh, this guy is actually going a little bit overboard, forgive me. The one memory that really takes me back is we had just launched the forensics division at that time. And as part of our business development opportunities, we used to go and meet some senior family office owners, etc. And I distinctly recollect this experience. The chairman of the board is sitting there, very senior family-owned business head. And we were explaining about fraud, etc. And he was saying, okay, explain to me what is fraud. Because we started talking about procurement fraud. Just imagine that maybe your purchasing manager is making 5% on the sides. And he's kind of sat there and thought and said, but you know what? If he's going to make me 30% profits and margins, I don't have a problem in him making 5%. Actually, you know what? It's a good idea. He'll never ask me for extra salary or salary increases all for 25 years. So you know what? I think it's okay. And look at where we are today. Because this is one thing I really want to kind of remove from our minds. A certain level of cynicism that's always been there. Some of us very well clearly remember the times when some of the most prominent drug traffickers, etc., had been living here many, many years ago, etc. And then I always used to get the same sort of conversation. Oh, what are you talking about? What financial crime? What anti-money laundering? This country has always been in the center of all those activities. So what are we talking about? Trust me, you've got to throw out that cynicism once and for all, because this world is completely changing as we move forward. Today, in the cabinet of this country, okay, His Highness, the sheikhs, in the cabinets, in the majlises, in the boardrooms, the conversation is front and center when it comes to fin crime. Absolutely front and center. And what I intend to take you through in the next few, say, 10, 15 minutes, and hopefully another 5 more minutes if the organizers are happy to give me, I'll probably kind of take you through some more of my experiences there. And as we kind of move ahead, I just want to kind of highlight to you, it's not just about the laws and regulations that have been set. So when I was back in 2005, I was actually initiating a piece of work to assess what's the laws of the country saying. And there was only one single document, and some of you might remember, Circular 24/2000 of the Central Bank of UAE. That was pretty much the entire AML law/regulation in this country. And you know how much it was? It was just about 18 pages. That's it. I was like, oh, okay, 18 pages, very simple. Today, fast forward, the core of it all is the 2018 AML law, which is an extensive piece of legislation, followed by the cabinet decisions, which was issued in 2019, and followed by the thousands of pages of regulations that many of our regulators have issued. Central Bank of the UAE, of course, being front and center. They've issued probably about, 800 pages worth of regulations. DFSA has issued probably 400 pages worth of regulations. FSRA and ADGM has done so. Ministry of Economy, you name it, pretty much everybody, including the registrars of the free zones even. So it's a very different world that we are looking at right now. And I can probably say that the regulatory structure of the law and the legal and regulatory structure of the UAE is pretty much top 1 or 2, or if not the top itself in the whole world itself. And I'm saying that because in the last 15 years, I have been privy to all the sorts of jurisdictions, US, UK, pretty much all of Europe, and many of the top ones like Hong Kong and Singapore, etc. And they're definitely right at the top of it. Now, recently, the UAE had issued their national risk assessment. The national risk assessment is one of the most cornerstone kind of activity that is necessary for the country to figure out where does its true ML threats lie. And this document I think the last one was done back in 2018 or 19, if my memory serves me right. It was a very simple activity at that time. But what has been done this time is very extensive, and I can actually say this is probably the best national risk assessment I have actually seen in any part of the world. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the contents of NRA, but there are a few interesting aspects I want to highlight there. Interestingly, you can see that the highest ML threats are very much on top: drug trafficking, fraud, conspiracy, etc. Now, why drug trafficking? You might actually think that drug trafficking and UAE, what are we talking about? Well, there is a lot of stories behind which you need to know, and that's very important for me to share. When you say drug trafficking, it's not that the UAE is just a transshipment center. So the greatest producers of drugs are, for example, 90% of the world's opium is known to be produced in Afghanistan, for example. It is then trafficked or through Pakistan, etc., and Iran to some extent, and then it is transported. This is a transshipment hub. It then goes on to Europe and US, etc. It's not just that anymore. Post-COVID or during COVID, there was actually an increase in the consumption of drugs here in this country itself. And believe it or not, I've had the, well, say, put this fortunate or unfortunate position to be in to actually see that we had to do something about it, especially from the bank's perspectives. We had bank accounts that were being used as mules, essentially to deposit the proceeds of drugs and then wire it out to the jurisdictions where the kingpins had them. Probably take a minute there to just explain how this happens. And it took us a few months before it happened. And you know why it happened? Because we met the law enforcement, Dubai police, and understood the full picture. So one day we were seeing that some of the accounts that were essentially belonging to blue-collar workers here, and we've got a lot of blue-collar workers, right? These were supposed to be seeing, 2,000-3,000 dirhams a month maximum, and then you see them wiring out. But instead, you were starting to see small amounts of cash deposits, like 400 dirhams, 300 dirhams, 200 dirhams, and it was going on for a few months. And then once it is like 10 or 20,000, it is getting wired out to certain jurisdictions, which was different to the country where they originally came from. Of course, this kind of looked a bit unusual, and we started investigating. And when we start investigating, we find that these individuals are not in the country anymore. As per our records, the visa is still valid, but they have already left the country 3-4 months ago. I mean, of course, as a bank, we would never know. Why? Because we are not going to go back to him unless the visa is expired to say, okay, give us your new visa. And that then led us to, and we saw hundreds and hundreds of them. We were filing STRs, etc. Then we went to Dubai police, and they actually showed us the other part of the story, which is important for you to know. So what was happening here is, the drugs were being, there are kingpins in certain countries who sit overseas out there, and for them, they employ hundreds of school kids, school-going kids, or jobless people out there in their countries and say, hey, take your phone, go to WhatsApp, put just any random number, +971 55 or 50, and just put any 7-digit random number and send a message saying, do you want drugs? Now, most of us have slowly started receiving at the time, do you want drugs? And many, or 99% of us would say, no, delete and block it and move on. But 1 or 1%, less than 1% of people do fall in because they are under stress, mental stress, or whatever the reasons, they say, yes, I want it. The next stage, the kingpin then immediately informs or this kids inform the kingpin. The kingpin then will inform the local handler here to say, connect up with this potential buyer and tell him to go deposit 400 dirhams, which is the price of that small, I don't know, Captagon or small cocaine or heroin, etc. And this guy will be going and deposit this money into the mule account, which is belonging to a blue-collar worker. Now, how does a blue-collar person's account become a mule? There are handlers in the community, in the labor camps, who actually looks out for people who are leaving the country permanently. Maybe they lost their jobs. Maybe they just want to go back home. They farm around and say, oh, this guy is about to leave the country. Here is 200-300 dirhams. You already have a bank account with X bank. Hand it over to us. All I need is your user ID password. Here is 500 dirhams. This guy is probably, 500 dirhams is a lot of money for him when he's saying goodbye to this country. And that is paid, and he moves on. And this guy now has control over that account. Now, expand this to 500 accounts, 1,000 accounts, 2,000 accounts, 5,000 accounts, 8,000, 10,000. When you look at the entire banking here, I would probably say maybe 20, 30, 40,000 such accounts might have been compromised over time. Then the buyer will actually go deposit this cash in this account. take a screenshot of the deposit slip, sends it across to the kingpin. The kingpin then informs the local handler, take the drug, go to some corner somewhere in Ajman or Umal Quain or wherever, put it in a place where there is no cameras, and then send the location pin to this buyer. The buyer will go drive there, pick up the drug. Of course, he consumes it, gets caught by the police. Police starts investigation, looks at it and says, the money trail stops at this place, which is an account of a blue-collar worker who has already left the country. What do we do? We were really, really stuck with this. And then we started thinking a bit more deep into it, and we kind of thought, okay, these handlers need to handle hundreds and hundreds of such accounts. Now, it is very difficult for him to handle all of these accounts differently. So we started saying, maybe this guy is sitting in one place, let's try and track his IP addresses. And voila, we actually found that hundreds of accounts were all being accessed through the same IP address, blocked them all. But then, as someone previously here said, criminals are one step ahead of us. They figured this out, they started using VPN. So once you put VPN, then it starts throwing us into different countries around the world. It doesn't tell you which country you're logging in from. Then we had to go one step further. We picked up the device ID that is actually there in all our devices. These device IDs cannot be that easily changed by the criminals. Then we found device ID because it's highly likely that this kingpin is accessing 100 different accounts from one single phone. And that way, we were able to find them and clean up hundreds of thousands of them. And thus, we shared it across through the public-private partnership, handed it over to the Ministry of Interior, who was leading a big task force. And then this information was passed on across to various banks, and action was taken, which reduced the overall threat of drugs here. So there's lots going on in the background, which, again, silent risk, but killer risks, essentially. Now, as we move on, it's not just these. What's quite interesting is the fact that you can actually see foreign corruption starting to come up there. In the previous NRA, there wasn't really a lot of focus on foreign predicate offenses. Not anymore. The UAE very much now considers itself as a very responsible country that is taking on a global ownership and accountability for fighting financial crime. And that means that if you have got predicate offenses or in other countries, we've got to do something about it. And yes, this country does have, because it's right at the center of the East and the West, or global South and the West, if you want to call it this way, and it's a growing economy, it's highly well connected. This is a great place for money launderers to actually build their organized professional money laundering programs to clean monies from corruption, etc., from elsewhere. Now, as we move on, what are the key sector vulnerabilities? Now, there is no news here, right? Like the key things that I really pull, the medium high risk is banks, the exchange houses, DPMS, all very well known. Of course, there's a lot of data that backs it up. But what's quite interesting is two things I want to kind of bring it up. One, registered hawala, which is only about 30 or 40 such institutions. Virtual assets and real estate I can understand, but virtual assets is now here. Now, hold the thought there, because actually there's not been too much enforcement actions on virtual assets yet. Why virtual assets have come up here? Because the whole virtual assets or digital assets, crypto, etc., this entire area is still building up its capabilities out here as we speak. However, there does exist what we call as unauthorized or illegal OTCs, over-the-counter exchanges here. What is an OTC? If you got, say, 10 Bitcoins in your wallet, in a cold wallet, you have to somehow exchange it for cash, right? So, if you go to BitOasis, which is a registered, regulated exchange, you just open an account and you can sell the Bitcoins, get the cash into your bank account, all fine. But if it's criminal money, I don't want it to be picked up by anybody. I can actually walk across to these OTCs that masquerades themselves as commercial brokers or general trading companies, etc., walk into their building and say, I've got a Bitcoin or 0.001 Bitcoin worth $1,000. He will charge you 10%, but he'll actually give you physical cash. And he can actually go even one step further. He can get you pay orders in case you want to buy a property out here also. So that's quite interesting and quite very well caught, because there's not really too much enforcement efforts on this, but this is what's going to happen in the next few years, I'm sure. Now, don't get too happy about the fact that auditors and accountants, lawyers, etc., are low or medium, because I believe it's only a matter of time before even our sector will also start getting under it, because if we don't do what we have to do as our job, we'll definitely get caught up in there. Scams, pig butchering is becoming a major issue here, scams. Now, all of you, how many of you have received all the scam messages saying there's a great investment opportunity, etc., in Facebook or Insta? All right, so that pretty much shows 56%. That's a reality. I have to share an experience with you here. And this is a bit sad, actually. I was in Jordan, and I was meeting up with, in the MENA FCCG, Financial Crime Compliance Group, and I ended up meeting this lady who was leading an institution called GASA, stands for Global Alliance for Scam Prevention. And she was explaining a story that was truly heart-wrenching. She brings together technology companies, banks, institutions, etc., all over the world to try and reduce the impact of scams. And she said one day in UK, she ended up meeting some of the victims of the scam. And she walks into the room. There's a round table. There's a family of 2 old people, like grandparents maybe, and then there is 2 young kids also there. And all of them are very sullen. And she starts interviewing them, asking, tell me about all the background. And this grandparent, who was probably about 60, 65, was actually saying, I've lost my entire life savings because of this pig butchering fraud. We thought that we are going to get some good returns by investing into something. Somebody reached out to us through Facebook or Instagram, and we fell for it. They actually took us through almost 12 months of telling us stories, etc. And the reason why she felt this was heart-wrenching is because that entire family was trying to attempt suicide. Because the parents, the grandparents, the parents had already died, passed away. That's why there's the grandparents and the grandkids. And the grandparents were the only one who could give a chance for these kids to grow up and get their education and move on in life. But because their entire life saving was wiped off by this fraudster sitting somewhere, they were almost on the verge of attempting suicide. And they counseled them, brought them back in again, etc. So there's a real life impact on pig butchering. A friend of mine who runs a shipping services company lost $400,000 2 years ago. And that was because of the Beck fraud, the business email compromise. Simply because he did not upgrade his antivirus in his laptop. They got inside his Outlook. They read through all the emails for 12 months, knew who his connections and contacts were, and then masqueraded as a supplier and told him, oh, change this bank account because we've just closed the other bank. Please open this bank account and send this money. And he paid $400,000 for a normal BAU payment. Money gone. And it took them almost 2 years to actually get out of that difficult situation in terms of lost profits and so on and so forth. So DNFPBs, yes, very much right front and center. There's about 16,000 DNFPBs that are very much covered by the supervisors. 96% is supervised by the Ministry of Economy, and the rest is by ADGM as well as Ministry of Justice. There's a huge amount of focus there. And the DPMS sector is DPMS, real estate and corporate service providers under the MOAC, whilst audit and lawyers, etc., are under the MOJ in that sense. What is very important is CSPs, for some reason, have not been very much focused, but I believe that it's only a matter of time before the corporate service providers will be. The reason? We know that bank accounts are increasingly being opened with assistance from the corporate service providers. And some of these corporate service providers from the market are we hear through networks, I can't prove it, that they're actually taking money from potential clients to help them through the process of opening bank accounts. And these guys are going down into understanding how banks work and then understanding how our risk assessment processes work to actually then give exactly the same information and documentation that will get them the highest chances of success to open a bank account. But we'll catch them, of course, later on. But as soon as the law enforcement authorities get more closer to it, I'm sure this sector will definitely get a lot more closer into it. So the key point I want to highlight here is the one small line that I actually saw in the National Risk Assessment. And that is, it says, Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Economy seeks to improve knowledge through the public-private partnership. Now, this really struck me because I am a member of the UAE Public-Private Partnership Committee. I'm a founding member because I represented my bank and has been there right from day one. The UAE ACPF, or the PPP committee, had been there since 2022. There's 50 plus entities in it, pretty much all the key stakeholders that you want to think about. All the ministries, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Interior, all the regulators, ADGM, CBUAE, not ADGM, sorry, FSRAs, CBUAE, DFSA, the Financial Intelligence Unit, all the key prosecution authorities, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, etc., Abu Dhabi, and banks, exchange houses, real estate and gold sector representatives are there. And I attend these meetings every quarter. There's a lot of information sharing that is going on. At this point, it's all about strategic information sharing, like we see typologies, and everyone is starting to feel free to actually share, which means this is very important. The whole point about the MOJ and MOEC becoming a lot more closer, because DPM, these sectors, the DNFPBs, are definitely going to see a lot more action as we move forward because of the PPP. And the PPP also created 5 to 6 working groups, sub-working groups. I'm chairing one of them called the Digital Working Group, which is all about technology. And there's one important information, which is the tactical sharing of information. We're just one step away from it. The PPP has been working very hard in changing the law of the country to start allowing sharing information a bit more freely. So, why are we here? Why is that UAE is taking this all very seriously? Is it just because of the FATF? Absolutely not. The UAE is taking it all seriously because of the vision for it to want to become one of the top 3 financial centers of the world. It has been stated very clearly by the leaders of this country that for this country to go to the next level, economic strength is absolutely critical, and sustainable economic strength. Our own D3 strategy, the D33 strategy, which is Dubai's own strategy, seeks to double the GDP of the country from 1.3 trillion to close to 3 trillion, and also the overall FDIs to come to about 650 billion dirhams by 2033. And we want to shift away from imports to exports, and private sector investments need to top up to $1 trillion. So all of this can only happen if there is trust and transparency in the system. The central bank is also taking a massive lead in terms of improving the banking sector asset quality. We have moved up, UAE has moved up from 13th to 11th rank in IMF, and has also launched FIT. What is also very interesting is the central bank has developed quite a few very critical capabilities like Al-Ihtihad payments that brings together all the payment structures in the country into one single entity. So all this UAE, FTS, ANI, all of that will come under the Al-Ihtihad payments. How many of you have heard about the open finance regulations? Okay. Clearly, all of you, please go back and read the open finance regulations, because it's going to change the entire sector in the next 6 to 12 months. Open finance essentially means as follows. Today, banks are holding the bank accounts, and we are performing all these payments and cross-border payments, etc. Tomorrow, the entities called third parties who are under the open finance regulations will be able to connect with consent from the customer to their bank accounts and actually start providing services. And just imagine the amount of disruption this could cause from a controls perspective as well as from an opportunity perspective. And for you guys as chartered accountants, be ready to service them too. Please read up on the open finance as soon as possible. The Digital Dirham Embridge project is the CBDC, the Central Bank Digital Currency Project. That's also gaining strength. And what it all means is that how much have we really come up from the FAT of 2021 days? Now, we have made excellent progress as a country. This is all what you call as a technical compliance, all of this. You can see a sea of greens here. But what I really want you to think about is the FAT of 11 immediate outcomes. The IOs are very, very front and center for FATF to continue to give UAE the high marks that we want to. And you can see that there is few areas where we are red and amber. And international cooperation, transparency, beneficial ownership, ML investigations, prosecution, and prevention of WMD. Now, this is from a few years ago. All of this, the country has been doing extraordinary work in terms of improving it. And let's kind of talk about a couple of them so that you get a sense of why this is all happening. So in the last 6 years, we had a proper FATF action plan. There was the highest level of commitment from the leadership. The NAML CFTC was created, but now it's called the General Secretariat. And it was a whole of government approach. 50 plus ministries, prosecution, everybody was brought in together, and there was a full strategic plan to go ahead and fix many of these things. Then we also created dedicated money laundering courts, and FIU also became an independent entity, which is like in best practice. Previously, it used to be a department under central bank. So what is outcomes? We have been removed from the FATF grey list. The supervisory enforcement efforts, fines. And this is what all of you should be waking up to, right? Just last month alone, the central bank has issued 323 million dirhams of fines to certain exchange houses and a bunch of foreign bank branches. Just imagine those numbers. And here is information I'm going to tell you, which is not proven, but it's a secret. Apparently, the reason why the central bank stopped at 200 million for that institution is because there is a regulatory limit to how much you can fine. And they got pissed off with that, and they wanted to actually say, you know what, these guys deserve more. They have just been able to get approval to increase it to $1 billion dirhams. Eye-watering fines are out there if we don't get our stuff right. I can guarantee you that. So, is it just about fines? Absolutely not. 248 AML CFT exams have been conducted in 24 by CBOE, 55 enforcement cases. Just go back 6 years or 7 years, this all would have been like 10 and 20 and maybe 0, 1, etc. And trust me, they're not stopping anywhere. The central bank has got a separate financial crime team with 30 expert investigators in it who are doing reviews, and they have been supplemented by 82 skilled persons who are private sector. Some of the large consulting firms here are approved skilled persons, and this is again an opportunity for all of you to think about, because this is going to keep on continuing. And that's the reason why they were able to do 250 AML examinations essentially. And in 2024 alone, 5.2 billion has been confiscated from bad people, 83% extradition requests, and 409% increase in inspections. Now, the most interesting one is 583 money laundering cases since 2020. But what I want to bring attention is 92% conviction rate. Nowhere in the world has the courts given anything more than 10 to 20% conviction rates. Money laundering is very difficult to prove. Finding the evidence and taking through courts, it takes years and years, if not decades. Not here in the UAE. The money laundering courts here have been so fast in finalizing judgments and 92% conviction rates. Extraordinary outcomes, essentially. So why am I highlighting all of this? Remember this. We have some reds here from the previous reviews, and trust me, I'm sure that in the next FATF review, which is in follow-up review sometime in 2026, FATF is going to come here. I'm fairly confident that they will convert quite a few of them into green again, for sure. So, as we move on, enforcement actions. Yeah, this is just 2024. You can see banks, 6 banks have been, there has been enforcement actions, which is essentially fines and whatever. Exchange houses 20, insurance-related profession. What I really want to highlight, and this is 124 million worth of fines that have been issued there, but what I want to highlight is, there's a small interesting point here. Whilst banks and exchange houses have been front and center, they are starting to focus on insurance sector quite extensively. This is central bank shifting their focus one by one. Banks, done, continue to do. Exchange houses, continue to do. Insurance companies, next. And for the first time, I'm actually seeing individuals being directly prosecuted. So this is individuals here, but in 2025, you must have seen the recent 200 million fine. That manager of that exchange house was also personally fined 500,000 dirhams. And he can never work in that sector again. Essentially, pretty much that's career killing, right? But what is also important for all of you to remember is, there's other sectors that is just about to come. PSPs, payment service providers. You've got RPSCs. You've got fintechs. These are all starting to get governed by central bank as well as various other regulators. And all of those will essentially start to feel the heat as we move forward, which is opportunity. Now, of course, it's not just about fines. A lot of bad people have been extradited. These guys are all really bad people. Mehdi Charafa, Sean McGowan, Nurdin, Balwinder Sahni, who was just recently, Balwinder is, I think he's known as Abu Sabah. He's now inside jail for 5 years, and I think 150 million has been confiscated. Now, these 3 guys have been extradited to their respective countries where there are cases against them. Mehdi Charafa is very famous from, I think, Belgian drug trafficker. Sean McGowan is a leading drug trafficker from Ireland. And Nurdin Hajoui, I think, from Belgium, I think, again. Oh, France, rather. Sorry, Mehdi is from France and Nurdin from Belgium. So a lot of bad people have gone on. Now, so what is the opportunities out here? To me, this is an inflection point for our profession. We are, as somebody earlier said, very fortunate enough to be straddling 2 major countries that is going to lead the charge into the future from a growth perspective, UAE and India. And it is important for us to really understand what we can do in this area, because I believe that we can play a huge role here. And let me just unpack that a little bit for you. Supervisors, regulators, law enforcement, we can help all of them. We just need to understand what we have to do and be proactive about our products to them and tell them. Crypto, virtual assets, open finance, I think huge opportunities out there. Now, areas we can cover, program design, policies, procedures, etc. But there's also other areas which I've not really seen a lot of chartered accountant firms coming forward, which is model validation, independent assurance, and tuning capabilities. This is going to become pretty big because there's a new model risk management standards that was issued in 2023 by central bank, and how many of your firms are ready to actually do it? If you're not ready to do it, somebody else will do it, and that's a lost opportunity again. Digital assets, crypto advisory, huge opportunity. Independent monitor, skill person, massive. Why do I say it's massive? So I was fortunate enough to have worked for 2 large banks where after the initial shock was over, the respective departments of justice of the US and so on and so forth, they said, you got to appoint a third-party independent monitor to ensure that your remediation process is working in line with our expectations. And what started off as a simple ex-prosecutor or lawyer from the Ministry of Justice coming in, or rather Department of Justice in the US, that team ended up becoming 200 plus strong and was charging $140 million a year, essentially, to this large bank that I was working for. Another bank, it was 40 million. And long story short, over a period of 5 years, one of them bought a 40 million house overlooking Manhattan. The another person sold his company, his stake for $80 million, and that company is now close to becoming a unicorn as we speak. So huge amount of value to be extracted out there. And trust me, in the West, I've seen most of this being taken charge by lawyers and prosecutors, ex-prosecutors. Here, you as chartered accountants, as sentinels of trust, have got a great opportunity to take the charge forward and become true partners to those stakeholders that I was talking about, supervisors, regulators, law enforcement, etc., to become the sentinels of trust. Otherwise, somebody else will. The last but not the least is something I want to highlight, which is there's a huge amount of focus on generative AI, agentic AI models, etc. Huge opportunity again for you to become experts in it and understand the impact and start providing services to ensure that this doesn't go wrong and it's all designed the right way. Finally, what is the impact? This is not just about silent risk anymore. This is front and center affecting us. What you see here is the impact of illegal logging in Amazon. What you don't see in this picture is the fact that as this illegal logging happened, an entire group of indigenous people was wiped off from the face of the earth because they were displaced, and then that's it. It was a small group of about, say, 30, 40 people. They were wiped out. They could not survive once they got out. These guys have been living there for like thousands of years without ever seeing anybody else out in the country. And drugs. This hits me so strong, and I would like to share a personal story, which is really sad. I come from a small village in Kerala. And when I was about, say, 15, 16 years old, I had a nephew of mine who was like second or third, not direct cousin, but second or third generation. He was like 5, 6 years old, and I always used to see him, very happy-go-lucky guy, always used to play football and cricket, etc. Then I went on to do my CA studies, and I came here. And this guy was also growing up. He finished his school, really always smiling, always helping. And then he went to college. I think he was in pre-degree first year or something. Complete change. He suddenly changed. His behavior changed. He wanted to buy a motorcycle. He was starting to threaten his parents, saying, if you don't buy, I will suicide, etc., etc. And he pretty much got everything that he was asking for. One more year down the line, we hear this sad news that 4 of them, he and another 3 more people, kids from our community, went to a nearby village, had booze, and then they rode back, racing with each other. 2 kids in one motorcycle. When I say kids, it's like 18, 19. 2 kids instantly passed away because of a massive accident. The story doesn't end there. My cousin and his brother, he came down, he knew about this, and he lost it completely. 3 months later, he suicided. Later, we understood that he had been caught up in drugs. And it didn't stop there. He started consuming drugs. He didn't have money. So he started becoming a carrier of drug peddlers from a place called, and of course, you all know Bangalore, from India, to Kerala, riding a motorcycle and bring this all back in again. Completely. So drugs is something that is eating away our world. And there is no sale of drugs unless there's a way to launder that money too. And my son is 10 years old. He's crazy about sharks and marine life. He wants to become a marine conservator. Why? Because we are not taking care of our seas. Everything is becoming polluted. Again, this all goes back to where? Corruption. Somebody has not done their job properly. And that's the reason why our entire oceans, there's going to be more plastic in the oceans than fish by 2050. 40% of all the species that used to exist in 1950 has been extinct as we speak today. 40%. Our biodiversity is going down drastically. The real virus of the earth is us human beings because we are growing. But then now, even that is nature is starting to go back. You can see some countries where population degrowth is starting to happen. So the impact is direct. It is right along with us. What does that picture look like? It looks like a nice little BPO. No, it's actually a scam center. And those are the guys who have been captured from the scam centers. Now, Dubai police has been doing a fantastic job of capturing a lot of these people. Now, to summarize, I know my time is up. I just want to kind of close down with a few messages, which is, this is our time to rise and shine. We can be the true trust sentinels for this country's partnerships. Remember, fin crime kills people, animals, as well as our own nature. It is an extremely impactful crime, but it's just that you don't feel it because we are sitting here in this room in great comfort. Out there, it is really impacting people. And when this happens, we are robbing our future generation of a decent life, an ability to exist and thrive. So, understand the criticality of compliance, AML. It's not just tick box, it's not just processes. It is truly life-changing. And let's leave this world a better place for our future generations, because most of us are 3/4 into our life, halfway into our normal life expectancy. We all become millionaires and help people become billionaires, but at the end of the day, when we are saying masalama, we don't take anything back, right? That's all. Everything goes away in the same place that we came from. So let's at least leave the world a better place, and this is critical, and you got a big role to play here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Shall I stay or please?
Yeah. Just please be with me for the couple of minutes, please. So thank you so much, CA Nishant, for such an insightful and forward-thinking session. We have taken I'm sorry to stop you because we want to listen you more, but you have taken this complex subject like AML and turned it into a strategic lens for the risk management, technology integration, and the institutional risk. Can we have a big round of applause for Mr. Nishant? I now request our chairman, CA Prakash Agarwal, vice chairman, CA Rishi Chawla, and along with our member, CA Nareshji Sharma, to the stage to present a memento on the behalf of the members and ICI Dubai chapter.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you once again, sir. Okay. So in the beginning of the sessions, I have told you that, the host book is having a gift, power bank, a slim power bank. So if you haven't visited their booth or kiosk, please do visit and drop your business card. Maybe you can win that smart power bank. And we'll announce the winner just right after our panel discussion of today's. Okay, so moving forward, but before that, one more piece of information. I think someone has lost their parking ticket. So please check your parking ticket. Our admin staff, Ms. Catherine, is having that ticket, so you can collect with her. Okay, so with that brilliant start, we now continue our journey deeper into the world of AML. If the first session helped us understand how institutions can use the technology and strategy to fight financial crime, the next one will focus on the risk-based approach, a practical scale threats before they become violations. And to formally introduce our next speaker, Mr. Shashwat Sanyal, I would like to invite someone who brings up sharp financial insight and graceful execution into everything she handles, our treasurer, CA Ashna Mulgaonkar. Can I have a huge round of applause for CA Ashna? Over to you.
Good morning. Before I start, I want to request everybody, those who have not able to register today, because there was a little juggle and they were not able to locate the registration counter. If anybody has missed registration giving their attendance, please, they both are there. Please go and give your attendance, because only people who give their attendance today will get the CPE hours. So please don't miss out on the registration. Now, after that fantastic session, before we further deep dive into the serious world of anti-money laundering, let's take a moment and appreciate how far we have come in this field. Do we all remember those days where our grandmothers used to tuck cash in the pickle jars, under the mattresses, fold it in their saris? In those days, if there was this anti-money laundering law, I think, and that time, none of these sharpest detective minds also detected that cash. But if we had anti-money laundering those days, I think this would have been a very big red flag and a suspicious activity. Thankfully, today, we have much more sophisticated tools and fewer hiding spots. But still, it becomes very complicated when you have to find one. But again, in all these risks, there is an opportunity for chartered accountants. So let us venture out in this field and see how we can do it as a business model. To tell us more today, we have another well-established speaker, Mr. Shashwat Sanyal. He's a compliance and AML practitioner and consultant. He's a seasoned banking executive with over 26 years of experience specializing in risk management, financial crime compliance, and operational excellence. His extensive career encompasses leadership roles in both global financial institutions and consultancy firms. He's currently focusing on providing AML and compliance services to DNFBPs in the UAE mainland. He's also an individual who has a DFSA supporting compliance officer and also an MLRO roles within the UAE. So without taking much of your time, let us hear with a big round of applause and welcome Mr. Shashwat Sanyal.
You need this. Good morning, everybody. Well, as Jay pointed out when he was starting off, it's a little early for me. But if I were to kind of say on a day like Sunday at this time, if I were to try and wake my kids up to listen to me, I'd find it very difficult. It's very encouraging to see all of you to come to listen to me. Thank you so much. A big round of applause to the entire committee for organizing this, and thank you everybody for coming in. So to begin with, I guess, this is about a little bit of demystifying stuff. Just as a show of hands, and I'm asking the negative because probably everybody's on the other side. How many people here in the room are not married? Anybody? Very few. I guess we can have a separate session for them. The rest, all of you do risk management. You're aware of risk-based approach. Right? It's a way of life. So we've kind of understood what it means to manage risk from basic existence. The other aspect which critically was pointed out by Nishant as well, in terms of professionals who deal in the space of AML. There isn't a school which teaches you AML. Right? We come from different places. We may have started careers differently. I started my career in the automobile industry. Nishant, I did not know that you wanted to get into that industry, but I worked with Fiat, which is the Italian car manufacturer, before I moved to banking. So anyway, the intent of saying this is to give a perspective is from an AML or a compliance point of view, we typically want to look over our shoulder to the next guy. Is it his job? The answer is no, the buck stops with us. It is our job. All of us in the roles that we do are required to keep our eyes and ears open. We can have the most glamorous words at high level. Of course, those are important. But coming down to basics, what is risk management, what is risk-based approach, and the interplay with national risk assessment. So quickly moving on. So what is risk-based approach? We all agree, we understand, we do risk management. Fundamentally, it is looking at the highest risks, focusing our efforts in that area. Simply put, it involves some of the three critical aspects of identifying the risk, assessing it, and then deploying resources or appropriate controls to deal with it. That's what risk management across is, and for AML, whether you talk from a CA practice point of view or any other application point of view, it is pretty similar here. So that's the larger bit that we talk of. Identification is the key, and our efforts have to go towards identifying it and then assessing the likelihood and the severity. Those are the key aspects. However, the big question is, how do you get to it? That's the bigger question. How is it that we start? Where is it that we start? How do we go about it? So risk management is a layered approach, and the reason I'm doing this is to kind of demystify. A lot of us on a daily BAU basis in terms of our practice in the industry get lost between these terminologies. So there are various terms that we hear. We've heard national risk assessment as part of the entire last couple of years in the practice, or through investigations that would have come, or questionnaires, we would have heard business risk assessment. We would have been asked questions about client risk assessment. So we hear risk assessment at various levels. How do these talk to each other? This is the typical correlation that exists. And it's important to understand, we'll go back to national risk assessment because that is a key indicator of where we need to focus. But the relationship is pretty much like this. National risk assessment gives us an understanding of the challenges at a country level. When we find that out, we are supposed to take those inputs and then look at the business that we run and look at how it impacts the business and form our policies and procedures from a business risk assessment point of view. We make those assessments and then put our controls around the things that have been highlighted. The client risk assessment is the last leg, where you basically assess at a client level. When you engage with a client, you assess the client's risk in light of the risk which has been highlighted overall at a national level, for which you have put controls at a business level, and you've then now looking at it. If you had to kind of summarize it in terms of an example, how these three play up. So effectively, if you are trying to stop criminals from entering a country, what would the national risk assessment do? It effectively is a forecast at a country level in terms of the kind of crimes or the kind of criminals that we can expect, where to expect these activities from, or who are these kind of people. That is what the national risk assessment tells us. If you move on to the next one in terms of business risk assessment in reference to the same example, it is our own. Now, if you're looking at a country level, the business risk assessment is more like your local town plan or your a plan to deal with the threats that have been highlighted at a national level, and how do you prepare yourselves in terms of having a controls, policies, or procedures to deal with that. And at a client risk assessment level, fundamentally what you're trying to do there is that you've seen the first one, you've done the second activity at your end. At a client risk assessment, you are actually evaluating the individual who's coming into your town to assess whether he brings along or he represents any of these risks, if you should let him in or not. So fundamentally, that's the correlation in terms of how this works. And the interplays are there. Practitioners would normally end up using all three. It's essential. The guiding force is at the top. Moving on, simply put, those are the key short sentences for us to remember, for us to understand in terms of what it means. Overview and significance of the NRA is the next bit. So we've understood about NRA, we heard Nishant giving us insight about that as well. So if we look at why is NRA essential and what is the significance of NRA, and remember, through the conversation, I will not keep referring from AML or TFS or counter financing of terrorism point of view. I will not use those terms, but largely it is in reference to that. So that's one. And two, when we are looking at it, what is it that we need to do? These are the bits which impact us as well. So that's the layer. So why is NRA important and why is the refresh significant from a UAE standpoint? One, it is in line with the FATF recommendation. We are a FATF member country. We are being assessed by FATF. So yes. Two, it is to strengthen our controls internally to understand where the issues are. And then the last bit, which we heard earlier as well, we are also looking at a NRA assessment round the corner. We are looking at a FATF assessment round the corner. And this document is one of the key bits which gives us insight. The other second bit is it guides regulators of where to focus. So national risk assessment is essentially giving direction to the regulators to then go down to businesses within these zones or on mainland and guiding them in terms of where to focus, what efforts to put. Deployment of resources efficiently is another key objective, and that is what it helps us deliver. In terms of the risk assessment, if it tells us these are the sectors where the highest risk lies, people who are involved and engaged in that sector need to focus, need to draw up their plans to defend and ensure that they're on top of it. Supports UAE's overall effort in wanting to become a compliant financial hub. UAE is positioned so beautifully and has over the years created a position in this place. So of course, it is a broader goal to be one of the leading financial hubs and continue to be counted there, and that's why it's essential. Last, evolving risks and emerging threats. These are key. Threats do not continue to be the same. We will have criminals who will stay ahead of us. We will always, at times, be seen as trying to catch up. New areas come up. Today, we are talking crypto. We are talking virtual assets. Again, UAE as a country has played a leading role in terms of providing a platform in this area. And hence, when you open up a new sector, you open up a new line, of course, risks will come with it. And the other aspect is, of course, when you try and mitigate the risk in existing sectors, you will have the criminals who will try to find opportunities to look at new areas and get there. So that's another key bit. Regulatory expectations we spoke about, of course, which is there, and hence it is another key bit. At this stage, let's also kind of look at in terms of the canvas that UAE offers. It is critical to understand what UAE offers and why are we talking and why do we talk saying, well, we've all heard UAE was in the grey list. A huge amount of effort was put in to get out of the grey list. We continue to be we are not off the hooks. We continue to be on the watch because FATF's come around to do a review again. So just kind of give contextually why is it that it impacts us. Effectively, from a UAE standpoint, if you look at the geographical positioning of UAE, it is positioned beautifully between Asia, Africa, Europe. So it's become a hub. And effectively, that exposes or that makes it vulnerable because you would have it as a global trade hub, which will attract people, which will attract trade, which will attract or give opportunities to efforts around money laundering. The other critical bit which is there, that it is also surrounded by countries who have not been very stable, and that instability basically drives people coming into the UAE for employment, for business. Another aspect that the National Risk Assessment puts across, and for us to consider when we deal, it is not fair to assume that the individual is doing it and is a corrupt individual. Probably he does not know about the regulations, and that's something that has been highlighted, that a lot of times because of the current position where you have a confluence of people coming in from other areas, they probably do not know. It's also connected with land borders, so at times crossing over is very easy, and they themselves are not aware also, and such things do happen. The other critical bit is the population of the country. The country has been very welcoming for all of us. It's a country which has a large number of expats. When you have a large number of expats coming in, obviously you will have diverse demographics, and you will have diversity of risks which are also coming in as a consequence of that. So that throws up a challenge and a vulnerability. So when we are looking at it from our business point of view, or talking of risk-based approach, we've got to look at that aspect as well. When you deal with different individuals from different geographies, it's important to assess which country, which geography the individual comes from, and be careful or be conscious of what risks it could expose us to. Federal structure of UAE is another key bit for us to look at. Something that we need to be appreciative of. The way the country is, the federal structure of the country is, you have 7 emirates which have come together. Effectively, some of the emirates, namely Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Ras Al Khaimah, have their own structures, and the other 4 are clubbed together. So effectively, which gives them the ability to control and implement a lot of things their way as well. You will have zones which are emirate-centric. You will have various authorities which are centric to the emirates as well, and that throws up a large challenge in terms of coordination. Not that they are not coordinating, but then there is a vulnerability that the criminal mind is wanting to explore, and at times, by the time everything is coordinated, that activity has also happened. So this is a vulnerability from that point of view. Legal and judicial system also rides on the federal structure. So similarly, effectively, that's also divided and has its replication with reference to what the federal structure talks about. And effectively, that is the reason also which another vulnerability comes about. That said, the Ministry of Justice in December 2022 put in a dedicated federal prosecution for economic crimes on money laundering, which has helped the efforts of dealing with financial crime and money laundering per se. The last 2 bits are on the economy and the economic bit. UAE as a country is not largely an oil-dependent economy. There are various other elements which are there. Now, as a trading hub, it brings about all kinds of people from different jurisdictions into the country. It is also a recipient of one of the highest foreign direct investments which come in. And the openness of the economy at times throws up vulnerabilities which are misused by people in the AML space. It's a very open economy. It's a very welcoming economy. People are welcome to come here, establish businesses, prosper, grow. However, criminals go and misuse that system, and then that's the reason why it kind of throws up a vulnerability from an AML space. The other bit is on the aspect of the legal person. We know that we have many free zones, and this kind of gives you a sense of the kind of numbers that we are talking of. As per MOE UAE 2023 data, we have 828,000 entities which are split across all the free zones. So as many free zones, there are separate regulators in the free zones. You have 3 financial regulators which are there. On the mainland, you have central bank. You have 2 financial free zones, one the DIFC and the other one is in ADJM, which have their separate regulators in the DFSA and the FSRA. So effectively across all these free zones, mainland and across the Emirates, it throws up opportunities where money launderers actually try to use them. And we'll look at some of these in the future, some case studies which have been put, which will give you a sense of why these are important and from a perspective of how money launderers expose these, use these vulnerabilities and expose it to a higher risk. A quick cap on the methodology of the NRA. We won't kind of get into detail, but just to have an understanding, because all of us probably have been in ways at the receiving end of the National Risk Assessment questionnaires. We've come across many people in my conversations, and I think some of you would have definitely faced those questionnaires which have come in from the government, 230, 250 questions, back-to-back 2 questionnaires being sent across. From a business point of view, when we went out, have these conversations, a lot of people said, well, are we supposed to focus on business or are we supposed to get data in place to deal with what the regulator is asking for? It was a little surprising because probably it was the first few times some of us were facing that kind of questions being thrown at us, and we weren't prepared. The intent of the questionnaires, of course, was to gather data, and that's part of the public-private partnership that federal authorities drive. We are at the front end, and hence information is collected. So in terms of methodology, a risk assessment process was conducted over 18 months to then conclude in the National Risk Assessment document that we currently have, which gives us indication and highlights of what the threats are, what the risks around there are. A hybrid approach, of course, was used. You had the public-private partnership in terms of going out to the private sector and getting information. Of course, dealing with international organizations and institutes who provide they are historically advantaged because probably they have progressed on this journey. Another key bit to remember in AML again is, well, a lot has been said, probably some was spoken about me as well. All of us are on a scale. Somebody is a little ahead, but somebody is a little behind, but we are all learning together. If somebody were to come and say that, well, we know it all, absolutely not. Till today, I practice it, I learn every day. There's a new incident, new story, new event which teaches us things. So that's the intent. So risk matrices and tools from the world best were taken and those were used, and UAE has progressed into the journey where they look at these aspects to kind of upskill their understanding, assessment, and the way that they would deal with it. Risk identification kind of looked at some of these 4 critical places. We looked at sectoral coverage, which spanned across key sectors. Within the UAE, all of us appreciate some of these that have been listed are the key sectors as far as UAE is concerned. Banks, real estate, largely if you bucket them as DNFBBs. So you have financial institutions on one side, and you have designated non-finance business and professions, which namely cover real estate, dealers of precious metals and stone, corporate service providers, and chartered accountants and auditors. They are part of the DNFBB bucket, which are there. And then you have, of course, free zones and the challenges that come with that. Threat catalog that was used was of the FATF. FATF has defined predicate offenses. So, in simple words, when we say money laundering, what is money laundering? Money laundering is basically disguising illegal money. If the money is legal, you don't need to disguise. So in very simple words, that's what money laundering is. And the way you generate the illegal money, that is known as a predicate offense. So anything which is not in line with the law, and if revenue is generated as a consequence of that, it becomes illegal. Given where we are, we hear of instances where people, I'm sure all of us have come across, where somebody will say, tax at some point in time was not thought as a cause of concern. We would have heard people justifying, not from this country, coming from outside, wanting to establish businesses, that, well, we have a well-established business. Oh, well, we don't agree because the government here charges too much. We don't agree with that. Well, that's an individual thought process that we had, but if you continue in that process, what you're doing is you're generating sources of money which are not within the legitimate zone, and that then leads to money laundering. So that's the correlation that we have. Sectoral level risk mapping, of course, which were there. Real estate has been identified as throwing up vulnerabilities. You have virtual assets, you have cybercrime. Trade-based money laundering is another key bit. We'll see in the examples that will follow in terms of how trade-based money laundering also has been used as part of that. Lastly, in terms of engagement of stakeholders and the involvement of stakeholders. So we spoke about the length and breadth of how the federal structure is. So there's a dedicated executive office formed by the federal authorities to take on this challenge and move ahead. They had multiple working groups. We worked with the private and the public sector to take this forward. Laws and regulations have been established. So you had the enforcement authorities which were using these laws. You heard the 2018 law being mentioned, the 2019 cabinet decision being mentioned. So those were then taken up by the enforcement authorities across the various zones. And you had a total of 84 organizations, give or take, together participating to come up with this assessment. And of course, international expertise was used for that as well. Let's look at some of the ML threats which the risk assessment throws up, which is what is going to be important from our point of view when we look at our individual businesses as part of the practice as well. We heard of fraud, of course, we heard of drug trafficking, we've heard of the significant threat that these have thrown up. The second bit was, again, counterfeiting, smuggling. And smuggling is, again, led up to smuggling in cash and precious metals. How is UAE exposed to smuggling in precious metals? Again, the way UAE is positioned, and one of the key strong pillars of the UAE economy is the gems and jewelry business, dealers of precious metals and stone. We've seen, as highlighted earlier as well, that you have a lot of smuggling in precious metal, which comes from conflict-affected areas in Africa. Artisan mines, gold mines, which kind of then gold is taken from there and passed on here. So again, human trafficking, unlicensed money exchange. I think on the money exchange bit, we have an expert within us, so we'll talk and hear from him in detail as part of the journey there. The last bit is, in terms of the low and medium risk bit, is on the dishonesty, forgery, embezzlement, and arms trafficking. If you were to look at a case study here, specifically, this is something which has been worked by authorities here, and hence is being put. And you will see the interlinkages which are there as you look at. We've spoken of fraud, we've spoken of politically exposed persons being a challenge, we've spoken of foreign corruption. But this particular case involved 3 individuals and 11 legal persons. So the fact that you have so many entities which are registered, we spoke about more than 800,000 entities which are there across these zones. They were convicted for a crime of $44 million of trying to launder this. What were they doing? Funds were generated in foreign jurisdictions and were moved to UAE through formal banking systems. So it was funds which were brought in outside of UAE into this, and two foreign individuals who did not participate in the generation of the money or who were not involved in the actual predicate crime which generated this money were involved. The third person here, who also happened to be a politically exposed person. We've heard that if you have a PEP, you're supposed to do enhanced due diligence, a higher amount of diligence. So you had corruption happening somewhere. The PEP generated these kind of funds and brought it in. Two individuals played a role who were not directly involved in generation of that kind of money and were brought in here. And different entities were used across free zones to open bank accounts, move monies in here, and then move it outside as well. So this is something which was picked up by the UAE customs and federal tax authorities, and the way they looked at it is that when you look at the legal person, you did not find any transactions which could substantiate the kind of, you did not find any activity which substantiated the kind of transactions that you were looking at it. So that is why this was picked up. So continuing with ML threats, we've heard that quickly looking at, so we heard of drug trafficking and how that impacts. Effectively is another case study which was picked up here and has been published by federal authorities in terms of how this was cracked. You had 7 individuals and 4 legal persons who were prosecuted for this. The overall size was about $29 million that we are talking of. These were proceeds of drug trafficking. So effectively, it is not as if drugs were being, of course, there are reasons of concern of drugs being sold here as well, bits of which what Nishant highlighted. But these are funds which were moved from foreign jurisdiction, brought into the UAE through the legal person and the 7 individuals. UAE was used as a jurisdiction for layering. That was the purpose, because you brought that money here, used bank accounts here, used the real estate segment here to invest, and then what did you do? Here, it's an example of a trade-based money laundering, because when the individuals wanted to move the money out, they invested in automobiles, used automobiles, and wanted to ship those automobiles across. And the event was picked up because the custom inspectors picked up the fact that, well, they were under invoicing, and hence this was picked up. So largely, I guess, just a quick synopsis in terms of the various typologies that we see. These are the various typologies which have been listed. Of course, some of the key words that ring a bell in our mind when we look at these typologies are also listed here. So I'll not go through each and individual of it. We've kind of know most of it, but we can pick it up as part of the panel discussion. We've also seen the overall risk that canvas as far as the various sectors are there between financial institutions and DNFBB. But is it all gloom and doom? As far as UAE is concerned, the answer is no. It is not all gloom and doom. UAE has done fairly well in terms of its control effectiveness on various things. We have a solid AML regulatory framework which is there, so you have laws. We have the supervisory regime split between financial institutions and DNFBBs which is there. And we again have been actively cooperating on the international front with other jurisdictions in terms of sharing data. So if we are under any understanding that data does not get shared, the answer is no, and that happens. So continuing on this, I'll pause here, and in terms of the requirements to deal with it in terms of action, we'll request Jasbir to probably take away from there. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Saswat. I would request you to please come on the stage for the couple of minutes. Please, your session was, sir, truly highlighted that how compliance is not just a department, but a culture, and how early identification and structured thinking can transform AML from a burden into a strength. Now I request our chairman, vice chairman, and along with that, our senior member CA Surinder Sareen, and of course our treasurer CA Ashna Mulgaonkar to present a memento on behalf of the ICI Dubai chapter and all the members. So with that powerful session by Mr. Sashwat still resonating in our minds, we now shift our focus to the practical side of the AML implementation, especially when it comes to the reporting obligations and the early sign that trigger the action. And our next speaker is someone who has been part of building financial crime compliance functions across some of the most respected institutions in the region. And to introduce him, now I'll call upon a key pillar of our managing committee, someone who believes in delivering with depth, diligence, and dash of calm. I think we agree with me when I say the calm. Of course, our member CA Balram Buchudi to introduce our next speaker. Can I have a huge round of applause for our committee member Balram?
Thank you, Amit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. While he mentioned it is important to understand the framework outside as well as in UAE about AML and compliances, but it is also important to understand what is it practically, how is it going to be applicable to us, and what are we expected to do whenever we come across any transaction or arrangement. So to get into that, we have next speaker. It is my privilege to introduce one of today's distinguished speakers, Mr. Jasbir Bindra, a renowned expert in anti-money laundering and financial crime compliances. As the Managing Director of Alpha Omega Management Consultancy, based right in UAE, Mr. Bindra has been at the forefront of shaping robust AML and CFT frameworks. With an illustrious 27 career in financial services, he has held pivotal leadership roles, including Country Head of Financial Crime Compliance at HSBC MENA and CFO for Global Banking and Markets. His expertise spans financial accounting, treasury operations, risk management, and AML compliances, making him a trusted authority in safeguarding financial systems. Today, Mr. Bindra will share his insights on the critical topic of understanding reporting duties and how early detection can happen, offering practical guidances to strengthen our defense against financial crime. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Jasbir Bindra.
Thank you for that warm introduction. Thank you to the members of the management committee for inviting me to speak here. Thank you to Mr. Rajiv here also. He contacted me about a month ago and he said, would you like to speak? And I said, yes. So I've got the interesting opportunity to talk about, we've all seen and heard about the national risk assessment. How do we actually translate it for our businesses into practical steps? So I will try and clear that in the next few minutes. So I've got, I think, around 30 minutes to cover this. And so let's see. So I think before I start, one of the things that I'd like to clarify, right, what do we, when we do all this compliance, national risk assessment we've talked about, we implement compliance in our businesses, what is the outcome that is expected, right? From my perspective, I would say the outcome that we're looking to achieve at the end of the day is to report suspicions, report suspicious activity reports, report suspicious transaction reports, to the FIU on the GoML portal. That is the outcome. That is why we're spending so much time and effort on customer due diligence, KYC, risk assessment, because the end game, the end objective is to identify suspicions and report them. Now, having said that, the standard of threshold that is required for suspicions, we're not expected to be police officers, we're not expected to be private investigators, just reasonable suspicion. That's the reason why we're doing KYC. That's the reason why we're doing customer due diligence. That's the reason why I have this national risk assessment in place. We have a detailed policies and procedures at a business level. So that's the expected outcome. So trying to convert from the national risk assessment into some practical steps for our respective businesses, I'll start with what the overall outcome of the UAE national risk assessment is, right? The risk assessment is identified at a country level what are the key risks that the country faces from an ML, TF, and proliferation financing, PF risks perspective. Then it has gone into the details of sector specific. It's looked at various sectors, banking sectors, designated non-financial businesses, Hawala providers, virtual asset service providers. Out of all of these, some of the key things that have come out, there's a lot of focus on misuse of legal persons. So there's a lot of focus that we need to put on making sure that we identify beneficial owners when we're tracking, when we're trying to review businesses, when we're trying to review economic activity, who are the beneficial owners who actually benefit from that. And we need to look at cross-border risks. The interesting aspect, right? The UAE is a very welcoming, open business environment. So as one of my previous colleagues mentioned, a large proportion of the population is expatriates. So there's a lot of international trade that goes on. There's a lot of people that are bringing in resources from other places. So that exposes the country to ML risks. And finally, basically the expectation is whether you're working in an FI, financial institution, or DNFBP, we have to place greater emphasis on carrying out customer due diligence to meet the regulatory expectations. So in the NRA, they've identified some of the key priorities that the government wants to focus on and which we can translate into the private sector actions. So there's going to be a lot of scrutiny of who are legal persons. So we need to identify legal persons because by using legal persons, I mean like companies, for example, you can actually hide the ownership of assets. That's a very commonly used technique and it's used globally. It's not something that's specific to UAE or Middle East. It's a globally recognized technique. Second aspect, foreign predicate offenses. So as we've mentioned, there's a lot of expatriates living here. There's a lot of international trade that goes on. UAE established itself as an international financial jurisdiction as well as an international international trade center. So this opens up opportunities for people who want to misuse that environment. Trade-based money laundering follows. So like we said, like Shashwat also mentioned, that there's a lot of trade that goes on, international trade that goes on, and that creates opportunities for somebody who wants to misuse that. Organized crime, and then finally virtual assets and cybercrime. So these are the areas that we identified as high-risk areas, high-priority areas for the government that we need to translate in action when we're working as private sector. So I'll cover some of the risks that we identified for some of the key sectors so that we can then translate into action. Banking sector has been assessed broadly as medium-high. The key risk drivers, cross-border flows and foreign predicate crimes, right? Because banking sector, once you open a bank account, it's very easy to transfer money in and out, exposes it to misuse by bringing money in or bringing money out of the country. And there are a large volume of transactions. So when you're doing any kind of checking, transaction monitoring, that makes the task more complicated. What does that need? It needs strong KYC. It needs basically understanding who actually owns that account, who's using it, and understanding how to do the transaction monitoring properly. Exchange houses, again, that's been identified at an NRA level as medium-high risk. Key drivers of the risk that we identified in the NRA, high cash intensity, that's understood, and remittance volumes, that's what exchange houses are being used for, and that can be used in layering schemes for money laundering. What do we need to do? Enhance monitoring, customer profiling, and we have a speaker who is an expert on that who will talk more about how to manage the risk there. Insurance sector, that's been identified as a medium level. Key risk drivers there in the insurance products are life insurance, investment-linked products, and what the NRA has identified is room for improvement in some of the controls that are implemented. There has to be a lot of focus there on source of funds and beneficiary verification. Real estate sector. Now that's been recognized as a high-risk area. It's very attractive. It's an area where if somebody misuses it for money laundering, they can also profit from it because real estate is doing really well. The key risk drivers that are seen in real estate sector are large amounts of cash transactions. Cash is being brought in from overseas, and beneficial ownership is not very clear always. Who actually owns it, who controls it, who's buying it. And then the properties can be misused to launder illicit funds. The advantage of using real estate, in one transaction, you can launder very large sums of money. Controls that are needed to be put in place, enhanced due diligence, risk-based due diligence, and reporting obligations. So if you see something that doesn't make sense, report it. Dealers in precious metals and stone, that's been identified as a medium-high risk area. Key risk drivers, again, cash-based transactions. It is vulnerable to trade-based money laundering, so basically import-export of gold and precious stones. And again, there's a focus, the required focus is implementing robust CDD and record-keeping procedures. Legal and accounting professions, they've been identified as medium-low risks. Key risk drivers, use of complicated structures. Front companies, verification of UBOs, that's been a challenging area. That's what the National Risk Assessment has identified. So what do we need to do as private sector is we need to increase focus on strong client due diligence, understanding who owns the companies, what's the reason for the complicated structures. And virtual asset service providers, again, this is an emerging area. There's a lot of VASPs that are operating that are not regulated by anybody, and that makes them higher risk. And that's where there is a lot of regulatory coverage that needs to increase in other places in the world as well. So whenever you're dealing with a VASP, you need to check whether they're properly registered, who are they licensed by, are they following any rules and regulations. So I'm going to cover a couple of slides now. What actions do we need to take? Some practical steps. So if you're operating as an FI, I think you need to look at the National Risk Assessment and update your MLTF risk, right? We're all supposed to prepare a business risk assessment. You need to then apply enhanced due diligence. You cannot apply a checklist-based approach. A lot of times you talk to people and they say, okay, I've got this checklist, let me see if I can tick everything. No, you actually need to understand what the client is doing. A lot of the times what I find when you're dealing with clients is they'll say, okay, you know what, we filled this checklist. But when you actually look at it, by looking at that checklist, do you really understand who the person is that you're dealing with, what activities they're doing? No. So we need to be very clear documenting what we know about the client. Maintaining and verifying beneficial ownership information, that's very, very critical. A lot of the times we talk about the concept of front persons, shell companies, shelf companies, and we do a checklist-based approach. We say, okay, this is the passport copy, we can see it, okay, this is the ownership documents. But the thing is, do we really understand who's actually controlling that business? So there needs to be a lot of focus on that. And sometimes, when you talk to people, they say that I know actually somebody else is controlling. So that's the bit that we need to capture. Submit quality STRs through GoML. I think that applies to all businesses, whether you have FI or DNFBP. I think FIs have been very good in terms of raising STRs and SARs, but what we found is on the DNFBP side, sometimes there's a reluctance. Sometimes people are afraid, do we really need to report this? Well, actually, that's the intention, right? As I said before, we're not supposed to be police officers, private investigators, just reasonable suspicion based on what you know. If you know something is not making sense, consider reporting a suspicious activity. From an FI perspective, again, control over exposure to virtual assets. So this is an area that a lot of FIs are dealing with. The challenge is a lot of the VASPs are not regulated. So how do you make sure you're dealing with money that is coming from legitimate sources? And finally, conducting a lot of training for staff. Cannot emphasize enough. Training is very important. Without training, your staff are not going to be able to recognize how to identify suspicious transactions. Now, similarly, actions required for DNFBPs, right? So DNFBPs is an area historically which is kind of lagged behind, right? Banks and financial institutions came under the AML law long ago. DNFBPs, relatively new, maybe about 5 years ago. So again, similar to banks, you have to assess your exposure, business risk exposure, based on the specific sector that you operate. For example, if you're operating as an accountant or an auditor, your exposure will be very different to if you're operating as a real estate or a company service provider. So you need to tailor your risk assessments to your specific business. The second one is a no-brainer: enforce robust client onboarding and monitoring programs. Again, easier said than done. A lot of the times people tend to focus on checklist-based approach. focusing on understanding a customer and documenting that. A lot of times I find people actually know who the client is, but when they're documenting, they look to just document, the basic ID details, for example. Identification, verification of beneficial ownership, very important that you understand who are you dealing with, who actually controls that business, and who's trying to profit from it. Record keeping requirements, critical. CDD records have to be maintained for 5 years in the mainland and 6 years in the financial free zones. Training is another area that in a lot of the DNFBPs, people think that, okay, training is something that staff can read, they can read. No, you actually need to provide a lot of practical training to staff because training is what is actually going to help you deliver the extra reporting that is expected from the NRA. And then, of course, finally, ensure communication with supervisory bodies. So there are a lot of trainings that are being run by the government, by the Ministry of Economy. I think we should take advantage of those. Those don't cost anything. They're free trainings, but you attend them and you will learn a lot. So from a compliance perspective, right? So we're going back from this training session. What do we take back? I've got 4 key outcomes. One, go and check your business risk assessments. Are they aligned with the national risk assessment, right? So if you've done an inherent risk rating of your businesses, is it aligning with what the national risk assessment has found? If not, you need to update it. Second, you need to embed a risk-based approach in all your processes, right? So again, a lot of the times what happens is that businesses, they're operating, they want efficiency, so it turns into a checklist-based approach. So you need to make sure that actually that's not happening, that you are identifying your high-risk areas that require enhanced due diligence, and that is being implemented. If not, you need to review that with your management. Third, no-brainer, participate in regulator-led sessions, right? So as I said, there are a lot of trainings that the government has been running since the last 4 years. They're very informative, very useful, and they actually count as part of your CPD also. They count as part of your formal training that you're supposed to have. So try and participate as much as you can because they're very, very useful training tools. Finally, maintaining a clear audit trail. A lot of the DNFBPs are not very sure what do they need to keep, right? So maintaining clear audit trails is not just the identity documentation, but also transaction records. What transactions do the clients do? And if there's some doubts about whether those transactions make sense, you have to sort of document as to how you overcame that doubt, right? If you overcame the doubt, did you report a suspicion or not? And if not, why not? If you did, then have the SAR reports as well. So I've got a couple of case studies to cover this because case studies can bring these things to life. My first case study involves a very large multinational bank which had opened an account for a family member of a PEP, a private banking account, and they opened it for a company. So what happened in that instance was that individual was basically transferring money to a private banking account. Over the course of about 5 or 6 years, they transferred $300 million. And during that phase, the compliance department of the bank had raised a number of queries, they raised a number of red flags, but they got answers each time. Finally, they even got a telex message from the central bank saying, don't question us, this has been approved by the central bank board of governors, it's all okay. But subsequently, it was found that it was not all okay. And the person in that case, the PEP involved, was actually accused of embezzling $300 million. Now, there were some red flags involved, right? So there's a lot of focus on understanding what is a red flag that's pertinent to your industry. What are the things that can make you ask more questions? So one of the things was this was a foreign predicate offense. So money is coming from overseas, large amount of money coming from overseas. You need to understand what is generating that money in that other country, right? Even if it's coming through banking channels. Second aspect of that was a red flag, there was a PEP involved, right? So the person who actually opened the account was the brother of the PEP, right? That itself should be a red flag. There's a lot of focus. We cover it on all the trainings, but yet this is a point that sometimes people tend to ignore, right? This was built on personal relationship, but when you tried to document, they couldn't explain where that money was coming from. Third, there was a shell company involved. This was a very interesting feature because what this person did was they started paying commissions from regular transactions into that company, and that is the money that was transferred to the private banking account. Now, later on, it turned out that when they actually checked, this company had no physical premises, it had no staff. And yet, that was a fact that was ignored initially for the first few years. So again, these are red flags that basically highlight areas of concern. In this particular case, I understand compliance actually raised all these questions to the business management, but were overruled. So a very interesting area where you see red flags compliance is highlighting, but the decision making is not able to take benefit of that, of those areas that are identified. So key learning from this, if you see red flags, not only document them, raise them, and bring them to the attention of management, because that's where, if things go wrong, they are the ones who actually have to take ownership for these things if they hit the fan. A second case study, again involving PEPs, banks, shell companies, happened, again it's a global case study, involved a sovereign wealth fund operating in another continent, involved money being generated and being, a kind of fraud being committed where money was taken out of that fund, involved PEPs, so the people that were involved in setting up the various companies and transferring money overseas, they were PEPs, they were high-level politicians. The case involved use of banking channels, so some very well-known big multinational banks were involved in the transfers. And the reason that they were able to or they didn't pick this thing up because they believed they were dealing with legitimate government channels. So what you cannot overemphasize is that even when you believe you're dealing with somebody very legitimately, you have to make sure that you understand, who's the person, where's the money coming from, and why is it being generated. A lot of times we forget to ask the why question, right? We deal with somebody big, they tell us it's okay, go ahead and do this, and we follow the instructions. So what this case highlighted was that actually not asking questions is something that puts the institution at risk. There was a use of shell companies and offshore companies as well. So this case actually involved, PEPs, banking channels, shell companies, foreign predicate offenses, and investment in real estate as well. So we've mentioned time and time again, real estate is seen as an area which can be misused. In this particular instance, the money that was going to real estate was actually coming through banking channels. So just because money is coming through a banking channel doesn't mean that it's legitimate, right? We've read about how money laundering works. There are 3 stages. Placement, layering, integration. A lot of the time, real estate money might be investments that are coming through layering transactions. So being aware of these risks, asking the questions when you see these kinds of red flags, that is what is required. That is what the expectation is. So if one thing that you're going to take away from the NRA is report suspicions. If you see something that's a red flag, if you don't get an answer that is correct, then whoever is the compliance officer, MLRO, has the responsibility to report. You cannot be overridden by your senior management. That's a key sort of takeaway that I can suggest. Focus on what you see. If something doesn't make sense, if the responses that you get from your management are not stacking up, report it. That's the expectation. And I think I've finished.
So thank you so much, Jasbir Saab, for that enlightening sessions, your depth of the experience and the practical lens on the AML reporting responsibilities, especially you explored about the DNBFs, gave us a clear understanding of what real world compliance truly looks like. So on behalf of the ICI Dubai chapter, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to you. And quickly, I would like to call Chairman, our Vice Chairman, of course, with our committee member, Balram Buchudian, our senior member, Unni Krishnan Saab, on the stage to present a memento on behalf of the members. Can we have a huge round of applause for Jasbir Saab? Thank you once again, Jasbir Saab. And now we move into the final and the most interactive segment of today's event. It's time to open the floor for a thought-provoking panel discussion. We have heard that the rich insights individually so far, but now is the time and the moment to connect the dot and ask the tough questions and explore together. Is AML really everyone's responsibility? And how can professionals like us across various sectors ensures true compliance? So joining this dynamic panel are the stalwarts who have spoken this morning and two distinguished professionals, Mr. Amarjit Chopra and our very own CA Rajiv Hira, who will now add even more depth to these conversations. And let me first call upon our executive committee member, CA Sanjay Gagrani, to formally introduce our next panelist, Mr. Amarjit Singh, Head of Compliance at Sharaf Exchange and author of The Money Trail. Sanjay bhai, over to you.
Distinguished guests, respected members, and dear friend, very good afternoon. I said very good afternoon, everyone. I think your ICI committee, particularly chairman, knows how to balance life. 1 week vacation in New Zealand, immediately after that, vigilance. From chilling in the New Zealand, now it's time to chilling with the compliance officer. Time to switch the gear from sunscreen to scrutiny. In the ever-evolving financial landscape, where regulatory frameworks are becoming increasingly complex, our one domain that continues to demand sharp eyes, vigilance, deep expertise is anti-money laundering and compliance. So we are indeed privileged to have with us today a seasoned professional who has dedicated his career to strengthening financial compliances, frameworks, safeguarding financial institutions against emerging risks. Mr. Amarjit Singh, Head of Compliance at Sharaf Exchange. In addition to his extensive practical experiences, Mr. Singh is also a respected author. His book, The Money Trail, has become a widely appreciated resource for the professionals, offering deep insight into how illicit money flow, operate, and more importantly, how one can detect and prevent it. His writing reflects not only his command over the subject, but also his passion to create greater awareness in this critical area of financial integrity. As our panelist, Mr. Singh brings with him years of rich experience, valuable insight on the navigating silent risk, preventing breaches, fostering a culture of compliance, which is not just a regulatory requirement, but also cornerstone of any business integrity. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm and hearty welcome to Mr. Amarjit Singh. Now I request Dikshit Jain to come on the stage to introduce the next panelist speaker.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you, Sanjay bhai. Good afternoon, everyone. A louder good afternoon will motivate us. Good afternoon. Okay, so first of all, it's great to see the kind of gathering we have in such a technical session on a Sunday morning. Today we are here to learn about anti-money laundering. But I just wanted to ask you a question, which I was also Googling out, that how this money laundering word came out. So does anybody know how this money laundering word originated? Any idea? We are talking about anti-money laundering. The money laundering, it doesn't come just like that, right? We wash the clothes, so we say washing machine, right? We are washing the clothes. So how does the money laundering word originate? So there is a theory. So there used to be a mafia group, Al Capone. They used to have some of their, laundermates to clean their illegally sourced money. So that is where the whole money laundering word got originated long back. Now, interestingly, he was accused of murders, racketeering, and a lot of other crimes, but he was jailed only for money laundering and tax evasion. So you can imagine how bigger the money laundering crime is. Now, another question, why we are all here? How big is the money laundering in the world? So as per the data published by United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, any idea on the number? How much is the money laundering happening in a year? Any idea? Sorry? Trillion? Sorry? $5 trillion. So as per the data published by them, around $800 billion to $2 trillion, which is about 5% of the world GDP, is being laundered every year. Such a big crime, right? So that is the reason we are all here to talk about the money laundering and how do we prevent it. So for that, we have our own person, our own member. when we say that, in the dark we have a diamond, we have our old diamond, Mr. Rajiv Hira. His name also have a Hira, which is diamond. So we have our own diamond who is going to moderate this session. He is having more than 25 years of experience in risk management, compliance, taxation, management consultancy across Asia, Africa, Middle East. He is a managing partner of RHMC Management Consultancy. He is also a renowned teacher and passionate educator, speaker, who's been training a lot of people on various subjects of corporate taxes, free zones, and regulatory aspects of money laundering. He is also renowned for his deep expertise in UAE corporate tax, free zone regulations. He is also a part of a regular speaker and a thoughtful leader at FintEdu. So he has been there as a part of our committee also previously. So everybody knows him. And I think no other person or no better person to moderate this panel. So without any further delay, with the limitation time, I would like to invite Mr. Rajiv Hira with a thunderous round of applause. Thank you. And I will also like to call our other panelists on the stage, please. Mr. Jasveer Pira, Mr. Sanyal, and Mr. Nuj. Please.
Thank you. Please. Thank you very much. I think a lot of practical questions keep coming up. One question or one thought which everyone has is, I have a client who is 100% doing third port shipment. He is depositing around 1 million dirhams a month in bank account. Is it okay? Yes, no, maybe? Yes, it is okay? Depends. What depends? Third port shipment. Customer is not here. What kind of a cash can be deposited? Okay, customer does not have a substance in the country. He is having a trade license, having a turnover of only 100 million. Is it okay? No staff, no resources, no people. That's what we are going to talk about. I think that's the most important point which every one of us from auditor, accountant perspective need to understand. So first I will go to Amarjeet. I think Amarjeet, you have a good experience from an exchange house perspective. So what do you think are the challenges which exchange houses are facing right now? Because we see a lot of news articles or the penalties and fines which are getting triggered. And how people can get educated not to make those kind of mistakes. I think that's where we have to look at it.
I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much, IC, for inviting me. So, myself, Amarjeet, I'm currently heading the compliance department of Sharaf Group from last 6 to 7 years. So, I think it's a very nice question. You might have seen that a lot of penalties are imposing by the central bank on exchange houses, especially for last 1 month, what we have seen, more than 8 to 10 exchange houses got a huge fine. So, what I could see the challenge what faced by the exchange houses currently, what we can see that, that our customer base for exchange houses are mostly non-banked or mostly are blue collar workers who are performing always a small kind of transactions and everything. And we always serve as a, the front line for those kind of customers. Also, we are dealing with a huge volume of currencies for the non-resident customers, where we don't open account for any of the customer, like how the banks are opening account for the customers, creating their funds, having a full analysis on the customers and all. We as exchange house don't open account as the banks are opening, performing the complete due diligence and all. Definitely we perform sanction screening, due diligence and all, but the having a clear picture of the customers gets very difficult for us. Other thing what we can see, the major challenge for exchange houses are facing is that we perform a huge volume of remittances inward outward to different countries and everything. Also, the third important thing is that we also perform a banknote import and export, where we ship the bank's notes to different regions, to different countries, where ultimately the source of the funds or ultimately where the funds are going to utilize, we have a limited oversight on that. Other thing what we can see also here that there are some exchange houses who are not diligently following the regulations of the Central Bank of the UAE, the standard which has come 1.1, which has come in the 2018. Then we have a revision of 1.2 in 2019 and 20, when a lot of amendments has come. But what Central Bank has seen that there is a lot of drawbacks in that, where the exchange houses are not completely following that, not understanding the risk of that. Like today we talk about the money laundering risk assessment, NRA and everything. So there are exchange houses who don't understand actually what are the money laundering risk is that. So we just take the general view of that money laundering and just perform a risk assessment just to satisfy the central bank or just to satisfy our regulators and everything or internal auditor. But they don't go inside and to understand what are the risk involved in their business and what controls they have to put in place. I think that is a major risk and what we have seen recently why they has been fined heavily. But I think it's not for all the exchange houses. What I can see, there are few exchange houses who are involved in that, but majorly what we have seen from last 2 to 3 years, the exchange houses are the compliance structure, the compliance culture is now at par as with the bank also. We can see they have a lot of, the systems upgrade, they have a lot of compliance policies, procedures, and a lot of, the big teams, what they have involved in terms of the compliance handling and everything, and management and oversight. We have also seen a lot of governance part. The exchange houses have put efforts in the governance. They have a compliance committees. They have a board which are direct oversight on the compliance procedures, the compliance systems, the testing of everything. So yes, we have seen a lot of changes in terms of compliance from last 4 to 5 years, but there is a lot more to be done, which we can see a lot of change in other upcoming months and upcoming years now. Thank you.
I think very interesting thought points which you have referred to. Maybe one point which I will ask for. Is it okay to receive money from exchange house from the foreign country? Answer may be yes or no. We'll look at that. But make sure when you are receiving money from the exchange house, keep the exchange house receipt.
Very important.
So in one of the cases we have seen where people have said, I have received the money from the exchange house. I said, can I see the receipt from where you have received? It was a A4 paper and the person who has received his Emirates ID was written and he has signed. I said, how will you prove to any authority that this money is received from the exchange house, not the so-called hawala? Right? So that's a very important point when we look into. That's what we have seen how things are going in a right or wrong direction.
I just want to add one more thing here. We recently had last year, the central bank inspection. In there was one transaction picked up by the central bank. The customer has done a transaction for around, I think, 89,000 something. He gave us a check which has come from one of the reputed bank in UAE. And as exchange house, we consider, suppose the funds are coming from the bank with a check form or an online transfer, we consider the source of fund because we know that bank has performed some kind of KYC on that customer. So, but central bank raised a concern on that I understand the customer has given you a check, but you need to understand where the money has come from. So we cannot completely rely on the banking side that they do their KYC and we just take a check and will be safer side. No, we need to go back, understand the customer statement, where the funds has come from. If it has come from some other account, take that account, understand that ultimate source of the funds is that. So full due diligence we also need to perform on such kind of, just to add to your point also.
So rightly said, so banking channel or exchange house does not legitimize the transaction. Source of fund, capital repatriation or profit generation has a very different meaning. So I'll go back to Nishant on from a banking perspective. What are the key factors auditors, accountants should look at? How they should maybe when they're doing the audit or accounting, what kind of a red flag which the banks look at from their perspective, which is helpful for them to understand?
Sure, yeah. As accountants and auditors, you are right at the front line. And I was just speaking to someone outside this room. Banks open like 50,000, 100,000 new accounts every month, especially the bigger banks. And there's no way in which we will be able to kind of assess every single one on a personal one-on-one basis. You might be onboarding maybe 1, 2, 3 clients at best in a month. You're in a far better position to actually spend that extra time to truly understand what this client is all about. The most important part is to basically use common sense. Ask him, like, okay, here's a 25-year-old guy who's just come from, say, India, and he says that he's got like, 5 million worth of cryptocurrencies that he has earned over the last many years. And he says, please help me open a bank account here as well as get me a residency visa, and I'm happy. You can stop there and not ask any further questions. And that's a mistake you would do. Ask the questions, but why? Keep on asking why 5 times and you will probably end up reaching the answer. You got to know that there is a law in India, the income tax law in India for cryptocurrencies is that you've got to pay 30% tax on all the profits you make from buying and selling digital assets or cryptocurrencies. But if you have losses, you cannot actually set it off. So it's a little bit unusual, but it is what it is. And you then need to take a step back and say, is this guy actually trying to get them, has he declared this at all in India? Maybe he has not. And he's just doing this completely off the books, as in like off the blockchain. And he would now want to come here, settle down, get a residency, 6 months, 1 year, get a non-resident status, and then sell it and then make the money, probably, right? So like this, you need to keep on asking the question, why, 5 times. And if you're then comfortable that, yeah, this all makes sense, it's very much on board, then you have ticked the box at the first place. Now comes the next part. You are auditing so many customers, and we banks actually rely on audited financials to put a certain level of reliance on the customer's, okay, creditworthiness is one part, obviously, but beyond the creditworthiness, we in AML2 compliance, we actually rely on this audited financial statements to see a couple of things. Are they being subject to tax? Are they paying VAT here? And the moment I see that their business is like very normal and they're paying VAT, plus now corporate taxes also come up, 9%, etc., then we will feel a lot more comfortable that these entities are actually operating fully on board. But you actually see entities which don't pay any tax because they are doing only entrepot trade, free zone trade, completely not coming into the jurisdiction. Then the questions start coming up again. Again, here is where you got to take a step back, do your due diligence, look at what's the kind of red flags that you expect. We, from our perspective, I would say that look for red flags like, what is his business? Where is he getting the monies from? Where is he selling to? Where is he buying from? Are the profit percentages quite normal? Is he getting like 30%, 40%, 50%, unusually large amount of profits? What's the kind of jurisdiction, high-risk jurisdictions is he operating in from? Is there a significant amount of cash involved? And finally, these days, also start thinking a bit more about, there's a lot more settlement that is now coming into a bank account due to business sales, not through normal banking channels anymore. It is coming through card schemes-based channels. So for example, if you've got an Instagram sales or an e-commerce site, then your settlements are all coming through the card schemes mode. Ask the questions. Where are you getting it from? Which countries are you selling it to? Why are you getting settled? The payment is getting settled through card schemes, and ask the question. And there will be very legitimate reasons, but if not, keep a close watch on that. So it's all about common sense, normality, and if anything is unusual or abnormal, ask the questions and be partners with us in fighting this together.
I think quite a lot to take, but one vote before we move ahead. Can we extend for 15 more minutes? Very less was there. Perfect. Now this gives us assurance that we are in the right track. So
they can ask questions, right, for that?
Definitely. Yeah. So coming back to the same point, which as a professionals, I will use a word, accountant, auditors, tax professionals. We are more near to how these non-compliances are happening. So word I'm using, which is again an accounting and technical word, look at whether it's a capital repatriation or a profit generation. And moreover, just keep in mind, for every individual, if it's a profit generation, more than 1 million, he's subjected to tax and corporate tax also. So connect those dots from an AML perspective, from a tax perspective, from accounting perspective, and that's what we are going to look at in a going forward story also.
If I may add one last point there. There is this report that I was reading about Nigeria. Now, Nigeria is unfortunately a very corrupt country. And they have got huge amount of natural resources. Like they are the largest oil producers in Africa, and they've got the largest oil reserves in Africa. However, there's so much of poverty, there's so much of development is really back. There is a report that states that there has been more than $60 billion that have been transmitted, wealth transferred illegally out of the country in the last 10 years alone. Now, you can do the math. I mean, this is a country that is really struggling with the Naira always depreciating literally every day, people putting US dollar under their beds, etc., and all sorts of other problems that it brings. There is extremism, there is all sorts of bigger troubles there. So yeah, this industrial shifting of wealth illegally is a big problem, especially from countries that have got a huge amount of extractive mining sort of industries, especially in Africa.
Definitely. So I think the storyline remains is be vigilant, look at the source, how the transaction is, do a right customer due diligence, and that's where the important point comes into. So Shashwat, moving into further, like when we see the customers are coming back and saying, why you're telling me everyone is doing the way the industry is operating? Why you're telling me to do something which is more training, more AML, KYC, why should I do? Because industry is not doing it. If I do what you are telling me, I may be a step back to the competitiveness. So what comments we should give back to the clients and especially for the community sitting here?
It's a great question because we come across this in real life, and that is true. If one just has to concede that purely if you were to look at first movers disadvantage, probably you can say yes. But one has to look at it from an overall perspective. It is not a point in time gain or a loss. It is an investment in your own practice, in your own business. And the benefits of complying, if one doubts, just look around the world. We have enough and more in terms of case studies, top names in the financial industry and institutions who would have paid billions of dollars to deal with this and save themselves. So the standard approach is just because somebody is not doing and the law has not caught up with the neighbor, one should not. So it starts with all of us together in terms of taking the right step. And as I personally, the belief is that it is not either I'll have it all or I'll have nothing, because this is a journey that we progress on. You take one step at a time and move ahead. But I don't think we are in a situation where non-compliance makes sense and the risks to the business is way higher than what one could contemplate. And some of the fines that we are looking at, even to the large financial institutions and FI exchange houses is, of course, even in DNFBBs, we've come across many where they're looking at this, and at which time they come back and say, well, help us deal with it, by which time too much water has already flown under the bridge. Course correction would happen, but for the future, you've already taken the hit.
Thank you very much. I think last question from my side, maybe you can prepare yourself if you want to ask a question. Mr. Jaspreet, I think NRA we have rightly articulated, and I'll recommend everyone also to at least read it once, at least the headlines and the index. Maybe something which is more important, you can go in more deep. It is talking about how the future of UA is going to be looked about. That's what NRA talks about. What are the future course of action? And you have referred it very interestingly. What are the actions going to happen? Predominantly, I think one question which keep coming up from a lot of participants here also, developers are not covered under the AML ambit, but brokers are covered. So what do you think this NRA has talked about? They have referred some of the points which the developers are going to be asked for the information, sharing of information. So maybe you can add up some pointers.
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. And yes, I get that question from a lot of real estate brokers as well. So I think, look, the reality is the UAE has followed the international standards. They've implemented the FATF recommendations. And within that, they've captured all the businesses that are required to follow the law. Now, what the NRA has also said, they've gone one step ahead. They've also started looking at other businesses and considering whether those need to be brought in within the ambit of the law. So that's one aspect. The second aspect of that is that, there is a belief that developers are not complying. I was actually recently speaking to the compliance team and one of the developers, and they are actually taking steps to comply. So they are aware of the law. Some of them actually reporting transactions, which they can do. They don't need to be registered on GoML. You can actually report transactions using an email address, right? So this is not common knowledge. So a lot of people just assume, there's a lot of, maybe the wrong word is gossip, but there's a lot of chat, right, that says that, okay, this thing is happening. But actually, technically, a lot of the bigger developers are aware of their responsibilities and the risks that they're taking. And I've come across a number of them that are actually taking steps to mitigate those risks. So to say that they're not compliant actually is not the right thing. I think what we have to say is that, yes, maybe they're not required to register on GoML, but a lot of them, given the volume of quantum of money that they deal with, they do take steps to make sure that their services are not misused.
Very, very effective point. I'll just add up here one pointer here. If I'm onboarding a customer, a supplier, a vendor, do I need to do a due diligence for them or not? Answer is yes. So if a developer is appointing a broking firm, they need to make sure that the broking firm is complying to what is required from a regulation perspective. So that becomes a vital important role for even developers also. So I think as the session started off, is there anyone who is outside the ambit of AML? Answer is no.
Rajiv,
everyone is within that.
Sorry, just to add on, if that's it. It's a common fallacy that developers or other businesses, why just developers are not covered. It would be impossible for any developer to run a business without having a banking account. And given the ticket size of what the developer would be, right, basic banking transactions would be monitored within the bank. So it is unfair to say that they are not exactly covered. So if you have a developer whose line of business is, so let's say if I run a confectionery business and I produce $1 million of cash into the account on a monthly basis, I'm sure somebody who monitors the account, the bank of course has its alert systems and transaction filters would pick it up to somebody be questioned saying, well, he runs a confectionery business. How good is his business that he produces cash, that to $1 million on a monthly basis? So again, there is a risk profiling aspect. We shouldn't kind of say that there isn't. So banks do a substantial job in these kind of ticket accounts as well.
So we open the floor for questions.
Hi. Hello, this is Munangi Rao. So just to Nishant, I represent a group predominantly present in Nigeria. We are about $6-7 billion business that we do. Mr. Hira, just to tell you, all we do is third port shipments. Just to put your two perspectives line. We too have two challenges. One, when we do KYC, what I do a KYC for my every participant, it could be a customer or a vendor or a service provider. We see a lot of resistance come internal first. The MD says, the CFO job is to get this KYC done and run the business. Second, we see from those participants, we don't want to give audited financials. It's very confidential. Why are you asking this? So we see a lot of challenges. While we have a very fantastic KYC, but completing the KYC is becoming an issue. So I want some guidance. How do I get these documents externally? People say that you can go to A, B, C agencies and take a report. Those reports are useless because they're very incomplete. They give very, very small information, but doesn't talk about shareholders, UBOs, things like that, okay? This is one challenge we face. Second part of my question is, people say I can bring cash. Who is stopping? Where is the law? Both my internal parties, MDs are asking, the customer is asking, I'm bringing cash to you, 300,000, 500,000, 100,000. Where is the law? When we say somewhere, we said 55,000 dirham is the law. But they said no law. Is any guidance in cash? Can I accept cash? I should not accept cash. These are two questions I want to leave.
I'll give maybe Nishant to answer the bigger question, but let me specify. Under the customs regulation, 60,000 is the limit of cash and precious metals and stones or whatever put together, which anyone can import without declaration. So if someone is having more than 60,000, which is bringing from the other country, you need a custom declaration. I'm not saying it's not allowed, but you need a declaration to prove that the cash was imported. Second point, if the cash was not imported for a third port shipment, how it is generated in the country has to be very clearly articulated and identified. So these are the pointers which comes into Nishant from.
Yeah, I think the first part is the question that you wanted to answer from here, given that you have answered the second. I've been hearing this for 20 years. My entire career, every time I come up with a new policy or a procedure or a standard, the business heads in my banks will come and say, oh, why are you doing this? None of the other banks are doing it. There's always this whataboutery that comes in. So I just go back and tell them only one thing. Do you want to have an extra 10 or 20% more business? Easy. And then face the wrath of regulators and get fined and actually probably go to jail even, thereby killing your entire business as well as killing your professional pursuits once and for all. Do you want to risk that and tarnish your reputation once and for all in your life? Or do you want to take it a bit easy, do the right thing, so that when you build a proper sustainable business, these hot money people, I call them hot money because these are monies that criminals who want to bring in money, they want to take it out also very fast, right? It's called hot money. Do you want to essentially be dependent upon that kind of a money, which will obviously put at all this risk? Or do you want to have a sustainable business that will ensure that you grow slowly, steadily, but in a sustainable way into the future? And many a times I bring in the conversation about personal liability. They all shut down. They all shut down. Till then, it's all about, oh, it's not going to affect me personally. This is all going to affect just the organization at best, or somehow no one is going to catch me. That's what every thief does, right? No thief, no criminal is about to do the act or the crime that they're going to doing, assuming that they're going to be caught the next day. Most of them don't get caught, but they get caught one day. And that's enough to finish them off their career, essentially. So go back and have your conversation with your MD, slowly, and tell him, let's go for a coffee. Let me throw this out to you. The other part that I've always found helpful is tell the stories. Stories are very powerful. And there is enough and more stories of extremely amazing people all falling down from the top of their careers just because they did not do this job properly. And remember, it's no longer about whether you are criminally involved in the activity. The concept of misconduct is also there, which is if you don't do what is expected of you to do, even if you will not be part of a crime, if you do not spend the right amount of efforts and time as a senior management to do the right thing in terms of setting governance and the framework, etc., and supporting it, you will be thrown out. You are very much under the crosshairs of the regulators also. I know very senior bankers who have lost their job for very small things even, like they did not really care about some governance meetings, they did not attend them properly, and they did not really read the papers, etc. And that's it. So take stories from the back end and show them enough and more, saying how people have lost their careers and has become personally liable, and some of them have gone to jail. I showed you some of the pictures also up there. You will see a change, and this is how the cultural change comes up. I have been facing this for throughout my entire life. But once you reach a certain position and you are trusted, everybody will change.
So I think the biggest question comes here is when we do a KYC, do we know the client? We do definitely know. So that point stops back, and we know the intent, understand. One of the biggest thing I think we need to digest is tax non-compliance is also part of the AML framework. So if someone is bringing cash from a country, why is a question. And is it because of a tax or currency control? Currency control is also regulation. Let's understand that also. That's not outside the ambit of AML framework.
If I will just add two more things. By the way, customs is very much part of the public-private partnership also. Okay? It's very critical. They play a huge role in terms of, in fact, they've also come up with, I remember they presenting on the new type of disclosure systems that they've built, making it easy for people to disclose the cash they are bringing, etc. But there's one point. Central bank has a requirement that all the senior members that you hire in a bank, like CEO, CRO, CCO, etc., as per central bank regulations, they all need to get what we call a fit and proper test approval. So banks obviously go through a huge process of selecting the candidate, but before they can actually let them start the work, they need to send it to central bank to get their approval. A few years ago, it was just a tick in the box, and almost 100% we used to get approvals because it's okay. Check the NRA. They've given the Central Bank Annual Report of 2024. It says 520 requests were received during the year 2024 from all the regulated institutions. 180 of them were rejected. That's 1/3 almost, isn't it? And I'm sure that's only going to go up, which means these are senior people whom the organization believed are fit and proper have been identified as not fit and proper by the central bank. And this is going to be the trend always. They want to increase the quality and the personal integrity and trust. Similarly, there's a new regime called MRT, material risk takers. So once you reach a certain level and above, our bonuses are not given every year to us because we are essentially what is called as a material risk taker. A part of our annual bonuses, if at all we are eligible to bonus, will actually be held back and be only given over a period of, say, 2, 3, 4 years. In fact, in certain organizations, global organizations, it even goes up to 7 years. So you could even retire 2 years down the line, but you only get your part of the bonus like 5 more years later. Because the decision that you made many years ago, if it comes and bites back the organization, they have a way to claw back the proceeds. So things are very different. And So you can speak about all of this to your MD and get him to change.
As a regulatory and financial impact also from your side.
Hi, Rajuji has asked most of the questions, and thank you for this session. One question that I have is actually, is the government thinking of, introducing other field apart from the DNFBP, FIs, as you have already asked that question? Because what happens is when we go to our client, they say that we are not a DNFB, we are not a regulated entity. So why we are required to do a KYC in respect of that? And as an auditor, our responsibility we guide in respect of that. But are we supposed to, in case they are doing the transaction, we have to think about, if they are doing a transaction where there is a cash incentive and things like that, we have to do our SAR obligations and things like that. But is the government also think, from your versatile experience, is there a probability that if, general trading or a motor vehicle business, sale business, is it going to be part of, a regulation sooner or later? Thank you.
Take it up.
Very interesting question. I think this is something that everybody asks about, that, okay, why are we being regulated if we are DNFBPs, but there are other businesses that are maybe cash intensive and they're not subject to regulations. So the reality is that all of these are remaining under scrutiny. If you look at the National Risk Assessment, I was reading actually the chapter again last night, and I saw that they were talking about luxury good dealers. And they said, okay, currently that is under review, whether to bring that category under the DNFBP category in the mainland. In ADGM, for example, luxury good dealers are already covered under that category. Also, if you look at the law talks about anybody who's selling in cash $15,000 or 55,000 dirhams or more, they should conduct due diligence. Now, the thing is, right now, that is not the case. But I don't think that should be something that stops us, right? So if you're operating as an accountant and you're wanting to do KYC on a customer, that's your legal requirement that you have to comply with it. Right, so if you go to a customer, a car dealer, and say, I have to do KYC, the car dealer cannot turn around and say, I am not a DNFBP, right? Because it's a regulatory obligation for you as a chartered accountant, as an auditor, to conduct that. So that's one aspect of it. Second aspect, I think, the DNFBP concept is about gatekeepers to the financial system, right? So what are the categories in there? It's accountants, auditors, lawyers, legal consultants, real estate brokers, company service providers, and dealers in precious metals, right? Now, when you're conducting business, definitely you're going to come in touch with at least two of them, lawyers and accountants. So if you're doing something wrong, there's a high probability you'll get picked up. So I think that has got to be something that people have got to understand. So not only is your financial institution looking at you, but the other categories of businesses that are there acting as gatekeepers of the financial system. So it's not as if that they're not covered, it's just that they don't have specific obligations.
So maybe a short and simple answer I'll give. You cannot have everyone as a gatekeeper. So at a home, if 10 people are there, 1 or 2 person will stand at the gate. That's what the DNFBP, FI and exchange houses were being designed. Second, when you give an auditor report, there is a section that AML is compliant. Is it a duty? Let me now put it up on a very different way. It's a duty of every auditor accountant, if you are in the category, to ask for, do you have a policy manual? Do you have a manual, procedures? I'm not saying it has to be structured in that discussion, but at least you need to have a overarching principle how those compliances are being conducted. If not, can it be a qualified disclosure or whatever comes from a report perspective? You need to think through from an audit side. So as whatever industry we are talking about, they have made auditor accountant responsible to monitor them. So central bank cannot put everyone to monitor and start reporting on or create a gatekeeper for everyone. So I think that's where the broad gist comes into play.
But let me put a bit more fear into your hearts. Remember one thing. This general trading company that you have onboarded, he'll have a bank account for sure, right? And let's say he do some Gochi business. We pick it up. We, of course, ask questions. He gives us some useless answers and some made-up documents. And we'll also probably ask for audited reports, which you have signed and given. Most of the case, these days, our appetite for financial crime is zero. As in, like, even if there is suspicion only, we will file an STR and get rid of this client. What then happens, remember, the moment a client, let's say your ABC General Trading, has been exited by Bank A, most of these banks will put them into what we call as internal filters, which means neither that entity nor the UBOs of that entity will be able to come back into that bank again. Fair enough, but he can go to another bank and open. But remember, one more thing has happened. An STR has gone to FIU, and permanently, for the rest of his life, that name is already in the registers of the FIU. Now, if for whatever reason there is a much bigger investigation that goes on, and somewhere there is a connectivity, the first thing that law enforcement does is they pull out the information from the FIU's databases. And they see that XYZ General Trading, completely independent, has actually received X amount of money from ABC General Trading. This guy has been caught because the name is now there in the FIR registers, which means it's part of the machinery. And when they pick it up, don't forget, as part of the additional documents, your audit report is also there. So it's not in anyone's interest to remain lax and say, oh, I'm not the gatekeeper. You may not have a direct legal obligation, but you have an indirect obligation to do the right thing, which if not, you will get caught at some point. It's just like this. I mean, you could say that it is the job of the traffic police to catch the bad guys who speed. Well, that doesn't mean that if there is no traffic guy, I can go faster. Well, sometimes you'll not have a break, then that's it, finished. So, self-compliance is key.
Just want to add in your Nishant's point here. So what happens that we also have a separate system, inquiry IEMS system, where we get an inquiry management system, where we get a request from central bank. In case of anything, the central bank give us a name of the entity or the partner or the individual person. We have to add in the system whether to search or freeze or to do the investigation on the customer. So that goes to all the FIs, including all the, I think DNFPB is also not sure about it, but it goes to everyone. So this person will not be able to open the account in any of the FI.
I think another critical bit that probably Jasbir also raised as part of the actions is what we don't emphasize as much is training. And while KYC and CDD are terms which get thrown like hot potatoes on a daily basis, it's a bit of an art, a bit of a science. To say that, well, when you're doing due diligence, it's not about, and unfortunately the challenge we've seen is that we typically will have somebody who does not appreciate or is not entrenched or has not bought the process, will take 5 sentences from the policy and throw it to the client saying, provide all of this. The good question is, do you need all of them? Are the documents a substitute for one another? If you don't assess those things, the client is obviously irritated, right? So when you try to build a profile of the client, it starts with looking at the client, understanding. So in your case, if as an auditor and accountant, when we are going and onboarding a client, right? Do we understand the client's public profile and stature or continuity of business in the UAE with substance, which is a lot of things are visible as well, to then say, well, I need 10 years of balance sheet. It is probably not required. So I guess there is a bit of work that we can do.
Just one small point. I know everybody's labored on it, and Nishant mentioned that the audit report will be visible. But one more thing, given as accountant you're a gatekeeper, the expectation will be, why didn't you raise an SAR or STR yourself as well? So that's
I think the biggest point comes is threads are there with everyone. We will just pick up the question maybe after we conclude now, because everyone has gone out the time. Thank you very much for the session. I think just sit on the chair properly, take a long breath and exhale, because I think a lot of pressure has come in from the session. Take it off. I think we are not doing anything wrong. We are doing everything aligned. Only thing is we need to keep the things moving in the right direction. Back to you, Secretary Saab.
Thank you so much, Rajiv Bari. What an engaging and the enriching, when you are the moderator, I know that the session is intact and you are keeping the sessions with a tight grip. So thank you so much, Rajiv Bhai, and what a session. A big thank you to all our esteemed panelists for diving deep into the gray areas of the compliance and helping us decode the fine line between the regulatory checkboxes and the actual preventive actions. I would request, please, to all the panelists, be seated. And I would also like to call our chairman, vice chairman, along with Sanjay Gagrani and our Jaspreet Saab, CA Jaspreet Singh, on the stage to present a memento on behalf of the members. And members, don't go. We have one raffle draw left, so you could be the winner. Jaspreet Saab, please come on the stage. Can we have a big round of applause for Mr. Amarjeet Singh on his practical approach on the institutional compliances? So much, and now I would like to call CA Lavanyaji on the stage to present a memento to our very own Rajiv Hiraji, to bringing the clarity to the strategic role of the professional in shaping AML outcomes. It's always great to see Rajiv Bhai on this stage, seriously. Can we have a huge round of applause for Rajiv Hira? And now I request all the panelists and the speakers, along with all the managing committee members who are present here, please come on the stage for a quick group photo. Thank you so much. And now this is the time of the raffle draw, and a lot of members have left already, so there is a more chances that you could be a winner. So I would request our sponsors, the host book, to conduct a raffle draw. Who is going to pick up? I think we'll request our chief guest Saab, Nishant Saab, to pick up one business card. Let's see who's the winner. So the winner is Matthew Joseph. Is he here? One more. Ambarjeet Saab, Ambarjeet Banerjee. He is here. Woo! Congratulations, Mr. Ambarjeet Saab. Congratulations. And thank you once again, gentlemen, for your valuable presence and the contributions today. I would like to request our executive committee member, CA Yuga, to deliver a quick word of thanks.
Good afternoon, members. They say silence is golden, but after today's event, I think we all agree silent risks are not, especially when they come disguised as AML breaches waiting to happen. On behalf of ICA Dubai chapter, it is truly my honor and, let's be honest, a big challenge to try and thank everyone who made this brilliantly insightful event possible. Let me begin with a big thank you to our stellar speaker, CA Nishant Nota. Your keynote was like a wake-up call for the compliance world. Silent risks, hidden threats, and how not to land in regulatory hot water. To Mr. Saswat Sanyal, your deep dive into risk-based approaches had us all rethinking our checklists and possibly our sleep schedules also. Mr. Jasbir Bindra, for reminding us that reporting duties are not just important, they are early warning radar we all need, especially before the regulator calls. Mr. Amarjit Singh, for your valuable insights. AML may be serious, but you helped us make it relatable, which is no easy task. And CA Rajiv Hira, your strategic perspective wrapped everything up with clarity, structure, and purpose, exactly what most of our audit files need. Rajivji, you were the glue that held all brilliant minds together, and the unofficial timekeeper, peacemaker, and panel traffic controller. Our panel discussion was the perfect finale. It brought together diverse viewpoints, lively debates. Thank you so much for all our sponsors. You can see all the logos. And special thanks to Mr. Mani, our alert photographer, while we were focused on spotting silent risks. He was silently capturing our best moments. Thank you, making everyone little more professional than we felt inside. And of course, heartfelt thanks to our ICA Dubai chapter, management committee, chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, organizing wonderful event. Thank you so much. Have a great good afternoon, evening.